Good evening and welcome everyone to the last day of the 4 days virtual refresher course on auditing standards organized by Auditing and Assurance Standards Board and Peer Review Board of ICA. Welcome to today's speaker CA Chinnaswamy Ganeshan sir from Chennai. Welcome sir. Welcome to CA Murali Krishna Chodavarapu garu and Jawahar sir, other panelists. Now I welcome Branch Chairman Machara Menwali garu and our Central Council member CA Dayana Sharma and our immediate past chairman CA Banarendra YV. I request Chairman sir to give overview of the today's program, please.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you so much. And respected Central Council member Dayana Sharma ji and CA Murali Krishna sir, senior member and fast SARC chairman, and senior member V. Jawahar sir, colleague managing committee of Hyderabad, land speaker of the day, CA Chinnaswamy Ganeshan sir, and dear delegates, very good evening. A warm welcome to the 4-day of refresher course on standards of auditing jointly organized by Auditing and Assurance Standards Board and Peer Review Board hosted by the Hyderabad branch of SARC and ICA. Friends, it's really a pleasure occasion where continuous and active participation of 50 plus delegates for an auditing standards, exceeding our perception of 200 plus delegates. It clearly shows the interest of our members for enriching their knowledge in our core area of profession auditing. Today we have two technical sessions. One is on SA 230 audit documentation. Second one is SA 501 audit evidence and specific consideration for selected items. Friends, to the best of my knowledge, both the topics are very much important for discharging our professional responsibilities. And today we have with us one of the eminent speakers of India on auditing, none other than CA Chinnaswamy Ganeshan sir from Chennai. Sir has presented more than 1,200 across the India, not only India, in overseas also. Sir is not only speaker or a faculty, author of the various books, and is also co-opted member of various organizations. And Sir is an expert in IFRS, Ind AS, and auditing, and he is an advisor for a lot of multinational companies in India. And with this brief introduction, I'm thanking our Chinnaswamy Ganeshan sir for accepting our invitation and be here for sharing your knowledge. Thank you, sir, for joining with us. And thank you all the delegates for active participation and encouraging us to organizing more and more seminars, and particularly in this specific area. And I thank our study circle of Hyderabad branch auditing and company laws, where this idea, inception of the idea has come. And I thank all the senior members of study circle group of Hyderabad. Over to Satish.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Jawahar sir, set sir?
Yeah, I have again logged in through my mobile phone. I hope I am audible and visible.
Yes, I do.
Very clear, sir. Very clear.
Sir, now I am requesting CA Jawahar sir to give opening remarks of the today's topic.
Yeah, thank you, Satish Garu. Chairman of Hyderabad branch, Machara Garu. Speaker of today, Chinnaswamy Ganeshan Garu. Our Central Council member, Dayana Sharma Garu, and all the other dignitaries, my colleague, senior colleague and a good friend, Murali Krishna, and all the other colleagues and dear members who are attending today. As you all know, you have heard me on audit documentation during the bank audit. And as Machara Garu trying to motivate me to come and speak today, he said, this is your favorite topic, so we would like you to please give the opening remarks. So I thought instead of trying to, cover any part of the standards, which our speaker of the day will be doing, I thought I will go through various reasons why documentation should be done. One of the things is, documentation actually helps you in increasing your billing, because your client will also know the effort that you people have to put. And in fact, when you ask a lot of documents from the clients, he also gets involved directly. And it's an indirect way of letting him know the effort that a chartered accountant puts in while doing the audit. See, all these days, we as chartered accountants have been following the standards without actually telling the client. But if you follow the documentation, it's an indirect way of telling the client himself the effort that you are putting in and the benefit that he is going to get. Because a lot of questions are going to be asked while you are collecting the documentation from the client. The second is the safety of a chartered accountant. Nowadays, you know that NEFRA is breathing down your neck. The quality review board is going to breathe down your neck. and all the agencies, SFIO, CBI, God forbid that, you are caught up in cases where these agencies are involved. And at that time, it will be up to you to prove that, you have really taken care and you have taken due care and due diligence while doing your audit. And following the standards and documenting them is a sure shot way of exonerating yourself at every stage. Documentation helps you in completing the audit comprehensively. It really shows you and guides you whether you have done the audit in the minimum standards that are required by the institute. So if you follow the standard, it gives you a comprehensive idea. Then audit also helps you. Remember, while you are doing the audit, you are also responsible to your the article students. They are being taught, and if you guide them properly, you will be training them also in the manner that the institute actually wants you to train them. So please follow the documentation and help them. And at the time when you actually take the article clerks into your office, when you give them the initial over coverage of what your office does, I think documentation and importance of documentation should be told to them at every stage, and at that stage especially. It also educates the clients regarding the procedures of the audit, but always remember that while you are doing the audit, taking the documentation from the clients, you should be careful that you do not follow the same procedure at every point of time. Otherwise, what will happen is what happened during Satyam. The company came to know of how the auditors went about the audit, and they twisted it around to their advantage. So don't fall into that trap. And in fact, audit the documentation will help you if you're following the standards, and especially asking for clear documentation. It will help you to follow alternate procedures where the main method of audit cannot be done for whatever reason. So that will help you to ensure in case you are asked why something has not been. For example, when you are supposed to take external confirmation and it is not possible to get the external confirmation directly, you will automatically do the alternate procedure. And if you document the alternate procedure, it will help you properly to ensure that your documentation is in order. Documentation also helps you in monitoring the audit. We are very busy with our own different audits that we have that go on simultaneously, and either our staff and our articles do the audit. Documentation, when you are reviewing the documentation, it will help you to ensure that the monitoring process is in place and that the audit is being monitored. Above all, there are two things that will happen. One thing is, at the end of the audit, when you are going through the documentation, you'll get the satisfaction of having completed the audit, that the team has completed the audit in all respects. And once you as a chartered accountant has the satisfaction, you also tend to know that you are avoiding the mistakes. And mistakes can be dangerous. In closing, I would like to tell you that we have heard always that, the big four never get caught. Or when even if they are asked and, they are questioned, they always, the auditors seem to, get away from all the problems. But the reason for that is their level of documentation. My friends, auditing 2 years ago and auditing today have made a lot of change. There is a vast difference, and documentation and following the standard is the only way that you can prove to the world that you as an auditor have taken due care and due diligence. And therefore, my dear friends, this is the right time for you to get yourself peer reviewed. All of you must be aware that from this year onward, that is 2020 onwards, every firm is now going to be is liable to be peer reviewed. Level 1 firms every 3 years, and the rest of them every 4 years. And therefore, my friends, I would request you to kindly get yourself peer reviewed. Peer reviewed not for the sake of finding mistakes. It is more for your peer coming in and saying, these are the areas of improvement. So before anybody else can ask you, get yourself peer reviewed and let your peer himself or herself tell you that these are the areas of improvement that you need to do. Thank you very much, Chairman, for giving me this opportunity. And I hope with this stage that I have set, we are very eager to hear our speaker of the day, Mr. Ganeshan, on the topic of today, that is documentation and evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Jawahar sir. Now I'm requesting our past chairman, CA YV Pandya, to lead as today's session chairman and introduce today's speaker along with his address.
Thank you, Satish. Chairman and dignitaries on the screen, and participants for today's program. I have been given the pleasant task of introducing a very eminent personality. He started his practice as a chartered accountant in 1988 and was in personal practice till 2005. Then he served as a director in Lovelock and Lewis, which is a network firm of PwC, for 6 years, and as a partner in BSR & Co. LLP, a network firm of KPMG, for 6 years in the audit practice. He was a lead partner for many Indian and multinational companies and carried out audits, advisory on international financial reporting, taxation, due diligence, and other assurance services. Presently, he is the senior partner and head of audit and assurance of Messrs. CNGSN and Associates LLP, Chartered Accountants, Chennai, a firm with 10 partners and around 120 team members. He specializes in financial reporting, including Ind AS, IFRS, and US GAAP, company law matters, audit and taxation, and is a recipient of the Jewel of India Award for his role in financial services and Certificate of Excellence for his contribution in the field of financial services by the International Business Council. He presented 1,200 plus papers at various seminars, workshops, and conferences in India and abroad in these specialized subjects. And he assisted more than 78 companies on Ind AS transition. He also authored a quick referencer on IFRS with Model Q&A, the revised Schedule 6 Ready Reckoner, Ind AS quick referencer, and Ready Reckoner for financial statements under Schedule 3 to the Companies Act 2013. He is closely associated with ICAI and is guest faculty for all its 5 regional councils. He was a co-opted member of the Accounting Standards Board of ICAI and Ind AS Transition Facilitation Group. He was also a co-opted member of the Ind AS Implementation Committee of ICAI and the Auditing and Assurance Standard Board of ICAI. He is associated with many chambers of commerce like CII, FICCI, etc., and universities like the University of Madras, Annamala University, Loyola Institute of Business Administration, Madurai Kamraj University, etc., and staff training colleges of the RBI, C&AG, and other banks. He is advising many boards of Indian and multinational companies and is presently an independent director in the board of directors of Railtel Corporation of India Limited, a mini Ratna public sector undertaking under the Ministry of Railways. He is presently a co-opted member of the Executive Committee of Institute of Directors, Chennai, Board of Studies of the Department of Commerce of the Universities of Shivnadar University, University of Madras, and the Tyagarajar College, Madras. Friends, I had the pleasant task of introducing an eminent chartered accountant by name Chinnasamy Ganeshan, who in fact is a Peria knowledge bank in the areas of specialization which I just talked about. We will have the good fortune of listening to his words of wisdom and learn from what he says. Thank you very much, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for the nice words.
1 minute, sir, before you commence the session, I want to make a few announcements for the participants. Please do not write your name and membership number in the chat box. Your attendance will be based on the software that is being used, and that will be a distraction to the speaker. Second, if you have any question and answers, please put them only in the Q&A and not in the chat. And third, please do not raise your hands when the session is on, because that will be a distraction to the speaker. And if we will be checking the chat as the session chairman, myself, and as the chairman, Masha Rao, will be checking the chat box now and then. And if we feel that something is very essential, we will bring it to the notice of the speaker. Thank you very much, and happy and an uninterrupted learning for the next 3 hours.
So can I proceed, sir? Good afternoon, members, and thank you for the nice words of introduction. And my special thanks to my good friend, Central Council member Dayanivas, who is instrumental in me being part of this particular session, and also the chairman and the office bearers of Hyderabad branch of Chartered Accountants of India. And then importantly, I'm a little surprised when somebody was trying to give the keynote address on standards on auditing. And CA Javagar sir has set the tone for the entire topic. So it's really a pleasure to watch people who are having in-depth knowledge on standards on auditing and also bringing that to the floor. So you have made my job a little easier, sir, especially when you are talking about the importance of documentation in respect of various activities and how it will be used to monitor the work, supervise the work, and ensure that the quality control is being retained. So really happy to have you as the chief guest to make the presentation and introducing the topic, sir. And friends, the topic which has been given to me is basically to ensure that we are getting into the insights into the standards on auditing. I'm not just talking about the standards on auditing. I'm trying to say what is the insights or the practical areas where we have to talk about on 3 important standards. One is on audit documentation SA 230, and second is SA 500, how an auditor will collect evidence during the course of his audit and use it for the purpose of reaching his conclusion, which will result in his audit report. And of course, in certain areas, the standards on auditing thinks that there are some special consideration which the auditor has to take into addition of normal audit procedure. So these 3 standards are what we have planned for the next 2.5 hours or so. What we will do is that we will start with the audit documentation, and maybe sometime after 1.5 hours or so, we will have a small break, and then we will reassemble for the next 2 sessions on the audit evidence and special consideration. In case, if our discussion on audit evidence, audit documentation is continuing after 1.5 hours also, nothing to worry, because the standard SA 500 and 501 are a little smaller standard compared to the audit documentation. So we will be able to cover within the time, and also we will be able to take the questions. As rightly pointed out by the moderator of the session, please put all your questions in the Q&A box. I will take it appropriately and then answer those questions to the best of my ability. And in case, if there are any questions which has to be further answered over and above what I have actually answering in the session, and if you're looking for any help, I will leave my contact details for all of you. And when you are in the field and you are looking for some help relating to audit report, relating to how the documentation should be maintained, or relating to any other matters of audit, you can always feel free to discuss with me by putting your questions on that. Okay. So now, what we are going to cover and how I have structured the entire thing is, we will discuss SA 230 audit documentation as the first session, and then SA 500 relating to audit evidence which has to be gathered, SA 501 relating to special consideration, especially in respect of inventories, in respect of litigations and claims, and segment reporting. Segment reporting, sometimes we may not be having for all the clients, but the litigations and inventory will be applicable to across all the clients. So we will spent a lot of time on that with case studies. And of course, during the entire discussion, I will be talking about the practical issues relating to this and including what has happened in various quality reviews, which is being done by the institute, the various committees of the institute, and of course, the peer review board, the FRRB board, and quality review board, and of course, now even the audit quality, which has been reviewed by NAFRA. So all those things we will actually discuss during the course of our entire presentation. So now, let me just see what is the main concerns or what are the things which we are looking for when we have discussed about a particular point of how the peer review board is looking for. As rightly pointed out by Jawahar sir, he has mentioned that the peer review board is actually looking for some sort of minimum quality maintained in carrying out the audit and how the documentation is being maintained at the individual engagement level and at the firm level. So when the peer reviewers are coming and doing the review, the major observations are tabulated. And when we are seeing that, their major observations are on 4 broad categories. One is non-compliance with the accounting standards and standards on auditing. The second part is important for us because non-compliance with the standards on auditing is considered as one of the important issue relating to the audits conducted or engagements which has been done by the various practicing unit. Second is non-compliance with the accounting standard. Let us at a later point of time, we will discuss whether we have really done the work or we are not really done the work. Is it a simple negligent of the work or it is a negligent of the documentation of the work which has been performed by the audit firms? Let us look into that little later. And the second, which they are talking about, is the financial statements signed by the practicing units are either having improper reporting or inadequate disclosure or misreporting. That's the way in which it has been structured, but the auditors are still given a clean audit opinion. The third important thing is very, very critical. What is the basis for today's discussion? Adequacy of the document of the work done. So even today, when I was talking to my team members, we get a lot of information from the client in Excel sheets. So whenever you are asking for an information relating to, say, for example, share capital which has been issued, or maybe the borrowings which has been done by the company, the term loans outstanding, client gives all the details. And these Excel files are simply kept as part of our work paper file. And sometimes what happens is, I have seen cases where the teams are making some highlights with some color, with the Excel and whatever modern tools available. You can do a lot of fancy coloring, underlying, whatever you wanted to do, you can do that. But what is the explanation for that underlying or highlighting or the Excel sheet which you are kept as a work paper? What is the work you have done on that Excel sheet? That is missing. What is the work done on each of the sheet of the work paper which has been received from the client in Excel form, and what is the work you have done is actually missing. So the adequacy of the documentation shows whatever work has been done is not captured properly in the documentation, right? This documentation, which is inadequate, makes you to feel that you are reporting without reaching a conclusion on the work done, because you have not done any work which is reflected in the work paper, and you have reached a conclusion that your audit report is not to be qualified. How it is possible is the biggest question which is coming in as part of the peer review observation. And if you see the fourth one, that is again is because of the inadequacy of the audit documentation. What it says is audit conclusions are not properly supported where judgmental issues are involved. Let me take a simple example where you are talking about a particular company, and in that particular company, the company has made a provision. Let us take simple examples, not complicated examples, so that you can apply the principles in smaller audit as well as mid-size audit and bigger audits. One of the possible areas where we will normally look into is that whether the provision created for doubtful debts is adequate. Whenever there is a trade receivable, we normally get an aging analysis of the debtors and analyze the debts which are outstanding beyond the credit dates, what is the reason, and what is the subsequent collection, and confirmation receipt from the client. All those things we will verify. But if this credit is outstanding, that trade receivable is outstanding for more than a particular point of time, the management whether has made a proper provision for the doubtful debts is the first question which comes in. Because whenever we are talking about an audit of the balance sheet, we are looking for certain promises which are given by the management. Promises, in the technical language, we use the word whether the management has given certain assertion on the financial statement. They are committing that we have taken care of this particular item. For example, in respect of an asset, they are saying this is existing as on the balance sheet date. One of the assertion, existence. Second, they are saying we have valued the asset properly. The second assertion is valuation. Let us talk about provision for doubtful debts. When we are talking about the valuation is, what is the meaning of valuation in trade receivable? Whether the trade receivable shown in the balance sheet is really recoverable, or any write down or any provision has to be created. The simple process which we normally look into, what is the credit period, why it is outstanding beyond the credit period, is normally we do. Sometimes the management has a policy of making a provision. We normally call that as a rolling provision. They make a provision by saying that any debt outstanding for more than 6 months, that is 180 days and above, we will create a 100% provision. Say, for example, especially in a FMCG company, if a debt is outstanding for more than 6 months, that itself is a question mark, right? Suppose if you are talking about a small trader and your debt is outstanding for 6 months, where the normal business is a cash and carry, how it is possible for somebody to give a credit of more than 6 months? It's a question mark. For example, if I'm talking about another bigger type of industry, a telecom industry. In a telecom industry, you are supposed to make your payment within the next month or next payment cycle. If you are not making the payment, automatically your service connection is disconnected. Maybe your outgoing calls will not go and all those things. What is the steps you have taken for not collecting for more than 6 months? So the management makes a judgment. Any debt outstanding for more than 6 months will be provided 100%. Let us assume that this is the management judgment. The question is it enough that I make a provision of only any debt outstanding for more than 6 months, or I have to consider even the assets which are outstanding for more than 1 month or 2 months or 3 months has to be tested for the recovery on a subsequent point of time? That's the biggest question mark. So if the auditor is taking a judgment, okay, based on the past trend, any debt outstanding for more than 6 months may become doubtful. And even in that case, the management is actually collecting at a later point of time by means of a follow-up. So it is enough. So it is one of the judgment which the auditor is taking. I'm sharing some of the examples completely from the live instances. Whatever examples which I am sharing is not imaginary or not fictional. It is all observations made either by peer reviewers, or by FRRB, or by audit quality, or maybe internally what I have experienced over a period of time during the course of my review to my own peers in sense within the firm, whether when I was in my
I think speakers are instructed.
Yeah, ask Ram to look into it once.
Yeah, Ramkumar, can you please check with the speaker, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
Anything can be done from our end in this.
Yeah, I'm trying, sir. I'm also trying.
Chairman sir, problem net connection problem sir.
Look, sir, the speaker maatladandi. You have a word with the speaker, and
Yeah.
maybe
Sir, I spoke to him. He got disconnected. He'll reconnect within 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, done.
Okay.
In the meanwhile, friends, I think as our learned speaker was telling, and what our senior member Jawahar had said, that we need to really keep in mind while carrying out the audits. And as Jawahar said, that is the only way we can save our skins. In case at all, if at all, we land into some trouble from the enforcement agencies, because now it has become a sort of a sort of a norm for the stakeholders to proceed against auditors if any problem or if their interests are not taken care of properly. So this session basically has been designed by our chairman with the help of Jawahar sir and Murali Krishna sir, who are the advisors, and Dayanima Sharma, the Central Council member, to see that somewhere most of our firms, 90% of our firms, I can say, we are a bit negligent on this aspect
Collection
of
of the
audit.
papers.
Yeah, we know we do a perfect audit, but the only thing is we don't have an evidence and record to say that we have done a proper audit. That is what we need to inculcate from now onwards. And the more we have the papers in place, the more safer for us. It has been told to us for quite some time now, from several years. They have been discussing on this. Not only the learned speakers, but also the disciplinary committee members of our ICAI. Whenever they speak to us on this topic only. Sometimes it gets so scary that we may we get a bit nervous about it, but nothing to feel nervous. It's only that we have to get into the habit of recording what we do, recording the work done properly through proper documentation and apt documentation. Maybe we should also train our articles to again cull out the summary and keep it, instead of the whole bulk of papers. They should not be destroyed, but at least the summary should be made of the work done. And I think Jawahar sir, you are the best one to say some more, share your knowledge in interim by that till the time.
Bhanu sir.
Yeah.
Bhanu sir, whenever we talk about a working paper and audit evidence in Hyderabad, we simply just first remember Jawahar sir. That's what I.
And one more thing that can happen if you maintain your documentation well is, your pride in the profession itself will grow up. You are doing the work, you put in all the effort, and you are questioned at the end of the day. You are questioned by the client as to why you are doing so much, so and so. You never asked this in the last year. Why are you asking now? Why do you want this in writing? Why should I sign it and give? I mean, a lot of questions. I'm sure all of us have come across that. I'll give you an example in one particular case. It's a government company. I had given some certificates a couple of years ago. But then, as I was going through, I realized that, probably this was not okay. Mr. Ganeshan has come. I will speak later. Yeah.
So you can conversation. You can continue with whatever you were saying, Jawahar sir.
Yeah, sure.
So sorry for this disturbance, because sometimes this audio, video, and technical equipments are like wives, so they never listen to us. They have to adjust with them and cajole them to get things done. So when we are talking about this audit conclusion not properly talked about, I will just share that file. So when we are talking about this particular situation, where we talked about the audit conclusion, especially with respect to the provision for doubtful debts. What you might have done is you might have seen the last few years past trends. You might have validated that whatever management the documentation is not.
I think Ramkumar, I'm unable to hear sir's voice. What about your end?
To them.
Yeah, Ganeshan sir, unable to hear your voice, sir. I think the network is not stable from your end.
Issue which we are seeing as again relating to audit documentation.
Yeah, I think that's what network is not stable. Yeah, delegates, extremely sorry for this and contacting the speaker. Sir, unmute yourself, sir. Unmute yourself. Ganesh,
Able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, now it's okay, sir. Please share.
Okay. Sorry, I think that there is some problem in my connection.
Yes.
I will just open that file and then move ahead. Basically, when we are talking about the issues relating to the FRRB, again, the major comments which are coming to us is basically on relating to audit documentation and the way in which the judgments have been accounted for. That is where, again, the question of coming into of
PPT, sir, please.
Yeah, I'm just going into that, sir.
Hello, sir.
The sharing is not showing me. Okay, this FRRB comment also when we are talking about is basically on the non-compliance with the accounting and auditing standards, non-compliance with the reporting obligations, and non-compliance with the disclosure requirement, which has been prescribed by the various regulatory bodies, statutes, rules, and regulations. And of course, it says because of that, the audit opinion which you have given is also seems to be inadequate and improper. That's the way in which it has been actually talked about. So what is the common thread when we are seeing the peer review board and when we are talking about the FRR standard board, the common thread of non-compliance with the accounting standards, standards on auditing, improper and inadequate audit opinion, and the root cause is basically the inadequate documentation to demonstrate what is the work which has been actually performed by the entity. This is exactly the problem which we are actually having when we are talking about the issues relating to the audit documentation. These are all the work which we normally do as an auditor. When we say that we are doing the audit, a lot of other work which also be possible. For example, we do an audit, we do a limited review, we do an agreed upon procedure, we do a compilation. So the entire attest function which we are doing are the other related services which we do can be classified into the 4 categories. And whatever level of assurance which we are providing, either high assurance or moderate assurance or no assurance, The only problem which we are seeing here is that in all these cases, documentation is mandatory. Even if I do only an agreed upon procedure, that means a client has said that these are all the things which we want you to validate and give you a comfort. And on that basis, I am actually doing the end work. One problem which I have is that whether that will help me in doing my activity relating to in accordance with the requirement of the standard, or there is anything which is actually not being properly done. So in all these cases, the supporting which documentation is missing, there is an issue of the quality question. In that particular situation, how we will be able to demonstrate, yes, I have performed my work, is to keep a proper audit documentation. My internet connection is a little unstable.
Yes.
What I will do is I will cut my video. I will only share my PPT till such time I'm getting the proper internet connection.
Sure, sir.
Because I'm doing it from my home. Just came out from office. I'm seeing that a lot of disturbance is coming in. Even now it's showing it is unstable. Let me resolve that. So why documentation is considered to be very critical when we are talking about is basically on one aspect, whatever we are giving in respect of an audit, we are unable to give an absolute assurance. We are unable to give an absolute assurance. I'm cutting my video for ensuring that the quality is proper and the internet connectivity is stable. So one of the issue which we are looking at is whether I will be able to give a proper absolute assurance. I cannot give an absolute assurance. When I say absolute assurance, I'm not giving whether it is true and correct according to the requirements. I'm not giving that particular to any of my in any of my audit assignments. I'm not able to give the absolute assurance. The second area where we are looking for is that, is it possible for me to give an assurance without using any of my judgment? I have validated everything according to the audit evidence which I have collected, and all my conclusions are only based on audit evidence. Can I give that particular type of assurance? That is also improper. It is also not possible because majority of the way in which I do the audit or I collect the audit evidence is basically on one aspect. This is, if you see, I use a lot of test check, and accordingly I use a lot of judgment also as part of my total activity. So if I do that judgment as part of my activity and I do the test check, is it possible for me to demonstrate that what is required in accordance with the standards on auditing, I have fully covered those items, or I still not done my work in accordance with the requirement? In that particular scenario, naturally, what is required for me is basically I have to look at the documentation which demonstrate, yes, I have done my work and I have done the judgment in accordance with my requirement and what is required by the regulator. So when I'm doing all these activities and showing to the entire world, and this is the way in which I'm doing the activity, naturally, one thing which is required by me is to demonstrate to the entire world that the work has been documented in accordance with what I have actually done. Okay, that is exactly is what is required to be done by me. So let us look into that particular aspect as well. Test check is one of the item. And another thing is, whenever we are talking about accounting are internal controls which we are talking about. That internal controls or accounting has its own limitation, because the audit risk or the control risk is always inherent, because the auditor is not doing a 100% audit and he relies on the internal control system which is existing as on the particular date. Most critically, the evidence which the auditor is collecting is also not conclusive. It is basically persuasive. What is a persuasive and conclusive? Conclusive means it exactly gives that this is the reason why I'm doing this entire activity. So this is what the reason why I could conclude accordingly. Complete evidence is available. That is what conclusive. Persuasive is no, I could not get that conclusive evidence that this directs me to the end, the conclusion like this. This is actually gives me a direction, or it gives me an indication that my conclusion is acceptable. That's persuasive. So majority of the audit evidence which available to me is basically a persuasive audit evidence rather than a conclusive audit evidence in nature. So because of this, an audit documentation is absolutely crucial for an auditor to demonstrate the work done by the auditor. Let us look at what is the expectation versus the reality of the situation. The first expectation when we are talking about, let me just explain this. What it says, if I'm talking about a good audit documentation, I'm not the auditor. Say, for example, you have done the audit and you are given that work for me to review. When I do the review of the work, I should reach the same conclusion like what you have reached. Because I don't know about the previous knowledge of the particular client, but you might be having done the audit for more than years together with that particular client. You know in and out of the client's business, knowledge, and experience, past trends, everything you will be knowing that. But I don't have any knowledge, but I am only a reviewer, but I should reach the same conclusion by reviewing the documentation which you have given to me for reviewing my job, either as a peer reviewer or FRRB or quality reviewer. I should be able to reach the same conclusion by looking at your documentation. Most importantly, without any verbal communication with the auditor. When I say without any verbal communication with the auditor, that shows very, very clearly that your audit documentation should show what was your test objective. What is the way in which you have designed your audit procedure? How you have executed your audit procedure? What are all the observations you have made as part of your audit procedure? And based on the observation, what is the conclusion you have reached, whether the test objective has been reached or not? For example, if I'm talking about you are testing the sales at the year end to ensure that whatever sales made at the year end has been actually dispatched to your customers. If it is dispatched to your customers, it can be recognized because the risk and rewards of ownership is passed on to the customer. So you can recognize that as your sales in the current year. Otherwise, we call that as a cutoff issue. It should be recognized only in the next period and not in the current period. That is what we are concluding. And to that extent, the revenue has to be reversed. So if you have done that exercise of checking the validation of the sales at the year end and concluded that nothing is required to be reversed, I, as a reviewer, when looking at your work paper, your test objective is to see that all sales accounted in the current period is relating to the invoices raised during the current period and in respect of which goods has been dispatched, the control over the goods has been passed on to the customer. First objective, which I wanted to check. The second is how I have tested this. I have taken the last few transactions for validation and of the year end to see whether it has been dispatched within the year end. Risk and rewards are passed on to the customer. And I also select few entries of the next year to check whether that dispatches is happened only subsequent to March or within March. But I am recognizing that this year I need the sales, say 100 lakhs, which has been already accounted for, but next year seems to be a little bad. So I am pushing certain sales to the next period. That also I look for whether that is happening. So how I have tested the cutoff procedure is part of my audit observation or audit work which I am doing. And based on which, what is the samples I have selected, how I have validated with the documents which are provided by the client, and what are all the exceptions I have found out. The exceptions means this is not to be accounted in the current period, it should be accounted in the next period. Have I identified any exception? If I have identified that exception, whether that exception requires a reversal in the books of accounts or it is not material to the financial statement. Because we are talking about only material items or material misstatement has to be reported by the auditor. If it is below the materiality, there is no requirement to adjust that number in the financial statement. To that extent, there is a possibility you can simply take it over as summary of unadjusted audit differences, get a management representation that in aggregate this amount are not beyond my material levels and accordingly not requiring an adjustment. You can document that. That is what the standards on auditing says. Just because I have observed an error of say 10,000, it need not necessarily be adjusted. I will look into the concept of materiality. Having applied the materiality, this unadjusted audit differences are not carried over or it is not adjusted in the financial statement, but properly documented, based on which the auditor has issued no exceptions to be reported in the audit opinion. You can give a clear audit opinion. If this conclusion has been reached by the auditor, the reviewer, without knowledge of the previous client, by looking into your audit work paper, should also reach the same conclusion without any verbal communication. What do you mean by verbal communication? I am not actually asking the auditor to explain where this work paper is there, how you have validated this. Crystal clear work paper is what is the expectation, right? But where we actually fall in the expectation level, basically the reality is every auditor, I can vouch for everyone who are attending this session and vouch for every of my professional fraternity that we do a detailed work, a complete work in every area of the attest function. Unfortunately, even for the tax audit assignment, we are doing that work. Unfortunately, we do not maintain proper documentation of the work performed and how we have reached the conclusion. We do not maintain that. Because we do not maintain that, we get into the trouble of the regulators or reviewers saying that there is no proper audit documentation, and accordingly we are not able to conclude whether you have really reached your conclusion properly or not. Okay, that is where the audit documentation finds a gap between the expectation and the reality. Frankly speaking, the standards on auditing and the reviewers are very clearly making one point. If there is no documentation, it will be presumed that no work was done. It is what the conclusion they reach. Just assume I have spent 3 weeks of time in doing one audit assignment. And after 3 weeks of my entire audit work, I have been told that whatever you have done is not properly documented. And to that extent, we are concluding that you have not done your work properly. And you have not done any work, but you have given an audit opinion. Because of that, you are held professionally negligent in carrying out your work. How you will feel bad about it. So that is what the importance of audit documentation, which supports you in every aspect of your work. Let's look into that. What is the audit documentation? Is it required only at the time of closure of my work, or it requires at the planning stage, or it is required only where I'm doing my regular audit procedure? Friends, I must say that the audit documentation is required in all phases of your work, right from planning, execution, and reaching your conclusion and making your audit report. In all the stages you are required. If I'm planning a stage, if I am looking for the audit documentation, I can attribute the audit documentation which are mandatorily required by various standards on auditing. For example, it says that you should have a proper audit engagement letter or letter of engagement with the client as per SA 2
think, friends, today we are having some bandwidth issues at the speaker's end. So kindly bear with us. I think it is a very short disturbance or a problem, though it is happening a bit more often. I request you to kindly have patience and bear with us till such time that he's back on the air. I think he's almost, yeah.
Coming back.
Yeah, he's
Moment.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, now I came back. So
No issues,
now
please.
I am trying to use three different gadgets. One is my own phone, and then my internet connectivity, and then again another gadget. So I think that probably we will not get into any of the problems now. So when we are talking about the planning section, as we have said, terms of engagement has to be properly drawn up. And what is the considerations for the various laws and regulations which are to be considered? That should also be part of your audit engagement. And again, when we are talking about laws and regulations, for example, if you are on a regulated industry, and especially, maybe I can take a simple example, you are covered by the pollution control board when you are running your industry, and you are not complied with the requirement of the pollution control board. What happens is that the company may be even closed, and even the going concern can be questioned up. So SA 250 has to be considered, and how you have assessed the various laws and regulations relating to the particular client, and how you have considered that in planning your audit. That is, SA 300 is also talking about how you have to plan your audit. And materiality in planning and performing an audit, SA 320. When I say this materiality, I will spend a little moment, because we are having a feeling that 100% of the audit has to be done. In fact, I still remember that in one of the very recent internal audit engagement which I have completed, one of my team member came and asked me, sir, the deputy manager of the finance team of the client is asking, you are not verifying 100% of the vouchers, 100% of the invoices. Then I have told the team members, let us have a conference call with the manager, deputy manager, so that let him understand what is our audit procedure. Then I have told him, first of all, we are talking about materiality, whether the issues are relating to material in number or the financial statement, first thing. And another thing is, whatever issues which I am identifying as part of the internal audit lapses, whether it is going to have a material impact on your preparation and presentation of financial statement, then I have to explain the concept of materiality. Why the auditor is not worried about 100% audit, why he is doing a test check and using the concept of materiality. So here also, I just wanted to tell you two things. When we are doing the review of the financial statement, we have seen two different scenarios. One, the audit is overdone, or maybe I can say over audit. That means what is required to be done based on the concept of materiality is not properly considered. That is one. The second aspect which we have considered is basically that the entity is also doing, one is over audit, one is under audit. What is under audit is basically the problem is you are doing the work in a manner that you are not able to reach a conclusion. In both the scenarios, the concept of materiality will decide, or you are doing your audit properly, or you are having a problem with your audit. In both the scenarios, you will be able to determine this. And of course, planning an audit and having an audit documentation talks about SA 520, preliminary analytics. What is preliminary analytics? I will just explain. You will know that you are doing this also whenever you are doing an audit or starting an audit. What normally we try to do, we are trying to find out what is the current year number, what is the previous year number, is whether there is any change in the numbers. If there is a change, whether the change or a variance, which we call, whether the variance is supported by a reasonable explanation. For example, when I am talking about, say, sales has increased by 50%, but my data has increased by 300%. Is the increase in data is supported by a reasonable relationship with my sales? No. So in that case, the preliminary analytics, when I'm comparing the current year number with the previous year number, I'm trying to identify, is there any situation where there is a possibility that the relationship shows that the variation is not acceptable, a deep dive is required or a detailed audit work is required in that particular area. The preliminary analytics comes into picture. SA 520 talks about preliminary analytics. In this case also, an importance is your audit documentation. What is the last year number? What is the previous year number? What you have considered as an exception, and whether that exception has to be treated as part of your additional audit procedure to be performed, has to be documented as part of that work. In the execution stage, when you are actually doing the validation of the audit evidences, SA 500, which we will discuss a little later, external confirmation is an important aspect. How you have circularized for the external confirmation for your bank balances, your trade receivable, trade payable, loans and advances, how you have got that, even bank borrowings, how you have got that confirmation from a third party saying that balance as per the books of accounts or as per the financial statement of the company is matching with the confirmation received from a third party. In SA 505, you might have already had this session also. External confirmation should be completely under the control of the auditor. So sending the confirmation, receiving the confirmation, reconciling confirmation with the financial statement should be properly documented. Any exception, how dealt with by the auditor? Is it material to the financial statement? If so, whether adjustment has been made as an audit JV. If it is not passed, what is the impact on your audit report as per SA 700, 705 or 706? All those aspects you are actually looking for. And another interesting factor is analytical procedure. SA 520 is talking about analytical procedure. Let me take a simple example. We were auditing a particular company which was publishing daily magazines, daily newspaper, weekly magazines, fortnightly magazines, monthly magazines, and of course, it is also coming out with an annual bulletin or souvenir. Now, I have to validate the revenue. The entire process of distribution is done through various distributors and agents. Whatever amount or whatever bill which they are sending to the various agents are normally around 2,000 rupees or 3,000 rupees. The total value of the sales of the entity for the year is somewhere around 250 crore, around 247 crore or something like that, if I correctly remember. So when I'm talking about 247 crores of sales has to be validated, how it is possible for me to validate the sales of just 2,000 rupees per invoice? If I select some samples of even 1,000 numbers, 1,000 into 2,000 rupees will give me only around 20 lakhs of total validation, whereas my total sales is around 247 crore. How I will get a comfort on that? SA 520 comes into handy. It says that you can use substantive analytical procedure. What do you mean by substantive analytical procedure? You can set an expectation that this is the expected sales. And for reaching that expected sales, you will use the independent expectation built. In this particular case, what we have done is every publishing house has to file certain documents with Bureau of Publishing Audit Bureau. So they maintain some audit records for the number of publication based on which they decide the circulation and what is the rating of that particular magazine. So the publishing house has to send that information on a monthly basis, and that is being vetted by a different audit bureau of the government or an independent body. So that information is an independent information outside by financial records. We took that information of how many newspapers on a daily basis, how many magazines on a quarterly basis, how many magazines on fortnightly basis, how many on monthly basis, how many souvenirs, and what is the number which has been mentioned as the sales or circulation in the document, because it has been submitted to an external agency which is audited, into what is the price at which I'm sending it to the distributor, what is the price at which I'm sending to the retailer. Multiplied by that, we have said that this is expected to be my sales in the financial statement. But at the same time, this is an estimate which I am doing based on some evidences which I have collected, audit evidences which I have collected. So I am giving some sort of expectation gap. So deviation is permissible if there is a plus or minus of 5%. When I have taken that number, we said out of the expected sales, if the sales as recorded in the books goes up by 5% or goes down by 5%, we will accept that the sales as per the books of accounts is acceptable. Friends, you will not believe me when I'm saying, after we have done that, the sales as per the books of accounts and the sales we have estimated had a deviation of hardly 1%. So we have documented the entire process of building the independent expectation and how we have concluded that deviation is permissible and what is the amount as per the financial statement, what is the deviation, whether that is within that permissible level which we have fixed already, and based on which whether the test objective that the sales figures are properly stated is acceptable or not. We reached and documented the entire thing as per SA 520. This file is picked up by an internal peer reviewer. Internal peer reviewer, when I am saying, it is actually an international member firm has came down to India. They have validated. On seeing this analytical procedure documentation, they have actually asked us the permission to take this audit documentation for them to use it in their presentation to various training sessions. So what I'm saying is that when you have a proper audit documentation to demonstrate, even an analytical procedure will help. And more importantly, when you are using audit sampling, how you have selected an audit sample and what is the way in which you projected the discrepancy between the actual sample with the expected level of the actual work which has been performed. How you have actually done that is also another area of important documentation. In fact, what I have seen as the gap between the audit documentation and the expectation is basically one thing. The expectation is if you are having, say, for example, 12 lakh line items in the population, out of which you have selected something as an audit documentation, audit sampling. You might have selected the samples based on your judgment. What is the judgment? Why you are taking the judgment should be properly documented. For example, I might have decided to validate or take the samples of high value items. The high value items when I am taking, maybe 100 samples when I am taking, it will cover 70% of the total population. I validate that. And what happens to the balance 30%? If the 30% is above the materiality limits which I have fixed in my initial planning stage, there could be a possibility of aggregation risk because I am doing the validation of sales. If I do the validation of purchases, there is a gap or exception. If the exceptions in purchase and sales put together is beyond my materiality limits, my audit opinion should be basically qualified. I'm missing it because of aggregation risk. So to avoid that basics, I should also do certain work on the balance 30% of the untested population. How I have selected certain samples to ensure that the samples are representation of the entire 30% of the untested population, and any exception which I have identified is projected to the total population still within the materiality limits. That is another interesting documentation which is critical for the audit documentation at the execution stage. Majority of us are failing on documenting the audit evidence collected, external confirmation, and of course audit sampling. Very poorly we have performed on audit sampling. And another thing is, a lot of estimates are done by the management, like provision for doubtful debts is an estimation, provision for warranties is an estimation, provision for actuarial valuation is an estimation. How the estimations are validated, the auditor should have a proper documentation. That is also important. More important issue is related party transaction. When we are talking about related party transaction, not only because of the accounting standard, but also relating to your tax audit assignment also, there is a disclosure of related party transaction under section 48(2)(b). And related party transaction AS 18 is mandatory for all companies except small companies and 1% companies. For all the companies, related party transactions are mandatory according to Companies Auditor Accounting Standard Rules 2006 as amended from time to time. So when we are talking about the related party transaction, two questions are normally coming to us, or maybe I can talk about three questions are normally coming to us. The first question is, how you have ensured that all the related parties have been identified. So only if I identify who is the related party, then I will go to the transaction. How you have identified that all the related parties have been identified? Have you looked into the declaration given by the directors, their interest in other companies? Have you looked into the minutes of the meetings? Have you looked into the register relating to the related party transaction? Have you looked into the board resolution and audit committee resolution? All these aspects are looking into, have you identified the completeness of the related party? Point number one. Point number two, have you, based on that, identified all the transactions with the related parties are properly identified and they have been accounted in accordance with the requirement of Companies Act section 187 and 188, whether the rules have been followed, and then what is the disclosure requirement as per AS 18, whether you have done that activity also, that is on transaction. And balances, that's the third part, balances at the end of the period, whether that has been properly reported. In fact, for each of these items, you are required to very clearly document whether how your audit process has ensured completeness of the related party, transaction, and account balances. Very, very critical, right? So audit documentation will only say how you have identified the related party. Even after that, we have a certain conservation reservation on this particular activity, because we are only verifying the documents as provided by the management. Sometimes if the management has received certain documents from the director, which itself is not properly disclosed, how I will be able to conclude that this documentation is proper or not? In that particular scenario, we are going to another extent of putting a caveat saying that this is as per the information available with the client or available with the management. That is also another way of documenting to ensure that we are taking management representation that they have identified all the related party transaction, all the closing balances. That is on the execution stage. This is also requiring an audit documentation. Third is events occurring after the balance sheet date. SA 560 is talking about from the date of the year end, 31st March, till the date of audit report, what are all the events occurring? Have you considered those events in your consideration is the first question. The second question which they are considering is between the date of the audit report and before it has been reached to the shareholders, is there any new event which has happened and the auditor has to take any particular precaution on that particular area? That is also comes as part of SA 560. How you have identified the subsequent event? Clear audit documentation is essential in that particular thing. And another important area is we use a lot of experts in doing our audit. For example, every audit is using the work of what we call as an actuarial report. When I'm saying that actuarial report is used for the purposes of the provision for gratuity or leave encashment, you are relying on the work done by an external expert. For that, how you have validated that as the correct thing? I will share one of my experience. We have taken up the audit assignment due to audit rotation from another audit firm to us. And when we are doing the validation of gratuity provision, one of the audit team member who had been assigned has asked a basic question, because we have a template of what are all the procedure to be performed. Basically, it starts with, have you validated the base data provided to the actuary is matched with the financial records? Because the HR department provides all the information of the employees, the date of joining, the date of birth, and it also gives what is the base salary which is being paid to them as on that particular date, based on which only the actual valuation is being done. Whether the base data matches with the actuarial valuation report, whatever is received by the actuary. First point of the audit, which we are asking. The second question which we are asking them is that whether the actuary is independent of the audit client. So for example, if the actuary is the son of the managing director, how you can expect that the independent actual valuation will be coming in? So check whether independence is there. The third question which we are talking about is whether the actuary is really having the expertise and whether he is a registered actuary who can be able to do that particular activity. The fourth question which we have asked is whether the actuarial assumptions used is proper or not. Just 4 questions, because we are not expert in making an actuarial valuation, but we are relying on the work of an expert. For these 4 questions, I have to maintain proper audit documentation. First, the team has seen what is the base data given to the actuary, taken that, validated with the data from the financial records and HR records. They have identified first error, that the number of staff used for calculating gratuity is, say, for example, 1,450, whereas the number used for calculating the leave encashment is 1,850. So there is a gap of 400 employees. So that itself is the first question. So they have first identified there is a gap between this number and that number. When they have gone to the base data, they have identified actual number of employees is 1,850, not 1,450. So what is the number considered for gratuity itself is something wrong. When they have asked the management why you have given only 1,450, the management is of the view that the balance 400 employees have not completed 5 years of service, and accordingly they are not eligible for gratuity, so we have excluded them. But unfortunately, actuarial valuation is not working that way. It talks about who has joined today and who is going to retire tomorrow. Both are considered, and then actuarial valuation is done. The first error has been identified based on the work which we have done and the documentation which we have done. The second question is whether the actuary is an expert. Yes, he is a very senior actuary. We have documented that. Whether he is independent. Yes, he is an independent actuary. That is also we have documented. When we come to the fourth question on the assumptions, one of the assumptions which the actuary has taken is that the gratuity provision has been taken to the ceiling limit given as per the Payment of Gratuity Act. That's what he has taken. So at that point of time when we have validated, it was 10 lakhs. Now it has become 20 lakhs. So when we have tested the 10 lakhs, the audit team members have been asked to verify and document that go to the gratuity payable account, check the actual gratuity which has been paid, because it's an unfunded gratuity. The company was making losses, so they have not taken a group gratuity insurance. They have taken as an unfunded. Whenever there is a person who is retiring, they are making the payment. So understanding the client, how they are doing, we have asked them, go to the ledger of gratuity payable, check the debits in the gratuity payable, which is a payment, and see whether any amount is more than 10 lakh rupees. If so, check whether it is paid to one employee or more than one employee. Sometimes aggregate amount might have been paid in one single journal. That could be possible. So we have asked them to verify. And to our surprise, the team has come out with a list of showing that nearly 40 to 50% of the cases, the amount paid to individual employees is more than 10 lakh rupees. Then we have gone to not the finance team, we have gone to the HR team and asked them one single question. What is the policy as far as the gratuity is concerned? Is it based on the Payment of Gratuity Act, or is it payment based on actual number of services which has been put on by the employee? We have asked that question. They have said, no, sir, this is an employee-friendly company. There is no cap or limit up to which the gratuity is payable. If they have worked for 40 years, we will pay half a month's salary for every year of completion. So that means 20 months salary he is eligible. And sometimes that 20 months salary may be even 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs, like that we paid for individual employees. So the fundamental question was the actuary's assumption relating to 10 lakhs of the threshold limit itself is incorrect. When that incorrect assumption has been brought to the notice of the actuary, The actuary has reworked the number. Friends, you will not get surprised when I'm saying the impact was 46 crore for the cumulative period. Up to the date of our audit is 46 crore to be accounted as an expenditure for additional provision for gratuity. Now you see, if I missed my audit documentation in identifying each of this area, my opinion might have been wrong, because if I given a clean opinion where this 46 crores of additional charge is not accounted for, it might have been biggest issue. So finally, what has been concluded is revised actuarial valuation has been taken. This 46 crore has been identified into two buckets. One, what is the balance up to the previous year? We have taken as an exceptional item, considered as a correction of error. Fortunately, it is it has been shown as an exceptional item. And what was the current period number we have charged to the profit and loss account, and with that we have closed that particular issue. So documentation of the work done by an expert is another area in respect of your audit documentation. Very important audit documentation. Here is where we are missing. In fact, I will share with you one example of because Mr. Javakar was mentioning about Satyam. So one of the issue which has been noted by the audit quality review done by the quality review board, when Satyam's scam has happened, they have identified one issue where they have said the system process assurance team, they call it as a SPA team, SPA team, system process assurance is doing the review of the information system audit, because majority of the work is performed through around the computer, not based on manual entries, manual journals or manual vouchers. So it's basically relying on the system. So to test the system reliance, they have done an information systems audit. And those information systems auditors have identified certain areas where it is vulnerable for somebody overriding the controls. But unfortunately, the audit team has not documented the work they have performed for each of the identified lapses, based on which they have concluded that the work performed by the audit team in respect of Satyam was not adequate. And accordingly, the conclusion reached is also incorrect. They have held professionally guilty of misconduct, right? So this reliance on the expert and how you have used the expert work in reaching your conclusion is very, very critical when we are talking about the audit documentation. The next important area is basically, what is the audit procedure you have performed? What is the particular item which you have tested? What is the reason why you have tested? And who has performed the audit work? What is the date on which the work has been performed? Who has reviewed the adequacy of the work performed? Is it a sample verification, or it is a trend analysis, or it is a substantive analytical procedure, or how you have actually come to a conclusion that the numbers are not materially misstated? How the overall review of the quality of the work performed has been validated by a senior person, and how the engagement partner has reviewed that particular work. You are expected to maintain the complete audit documentation for every nature, timing, and extent of audit. That is what NTA, whether you have done that particular activity. And that is what I'm saying, date and the extent of review done by the senior person engaged in the audit, as well as the engagement partner. During the completion also, audit documents is very, very critical. For example, have you got a letter of representation? In this, I should stop for a moment and say, we normally have one basis of getting a management representation for each and every item, and say that management has confirmed, so we are going ahead. Please, friends, understand that the observations of FRRB and peer review and quality review board, and even the regulators have identified that only in certain cases you can get a management representation letter. In all other cases, if you have got a management representation letter, it is not at all useful for the paper in which it has been printed. It is not having even the value of the paper in which it is printed. That is what the conclusion, to put it in very hard message. Let me take one example. I have seen majority of some of the published results or some of the cases where we have reviewed for quality, we have found out that a normal comment is included in the notes on accounts and in the audit report also as an emphasis of matter, where they say current assets, loans and advances, bank balances are subject to confirmation, and management has confirmed that they will be realized at the value in which it is stated in the books of accounts. If I have this, because you are getting a management representation, everything is proper according to the records, and accordingly it is realizable at the same value at which it is stated in the financial statement. If you are recording this, have you done your work properly? Every regulator, every standards and auditing says your work is inadequate, because if you are not able to get an external confirmation for bank borrowings, bank balances, you are supposed to do an alternative audit procedure. I think Mr. Jawahar was mentioning this. Have you done an alternative audit procedure? When I have circulated for trade receivable confirmation, I have not received the confirmation. Have I checked whether it is subsequently fully collected to ensure that, yes, this balance is acceptable to me or not acceptable to me? Those areas, if I'm just getting a management representation, it is concluded that my work is inadequate. I can be considered guilty of professional misconduct. So please be careful when you are talking about audit documentation with respect to letter of representation. Only those areas where there are judgmental areas in respect of selected standards where it is specifically saying get an audit representation, take that as part of this, not for everyone. Similarly, this is normally missing in every of our audit. After we have done an audit, we are supposed to discuss with the client, or supposed to communicate with the top level management of the client. That is what one of the expectations which we are having. Unfortunately, we are not documenting this, but we are having a very, very important meeting, closing meeting with the client. Even it's a private limited company, we meet the client, discuss with the client, these are all the issues which we have identified, this is the way in which we have resolved. All those things are happening. In respect of a listed company, auditors are supposed to make a separate presentation to the audit committee on the accounting and auditing matters coming across during the period. And from there only you are picking up something as key audit matters. In all these cases, communication to those charged with governance is important. In fact, one of the questions which is coming in is whether the communication with those charged with governance is required only in respect of the completion work. No, it is also even talking about your planning activity. In fact, I still remember that, I think Mr. Jawahar has mentioned this, the client knows what is the audit procedures you will perform. And accordingly, have you created some sort of unpredictability in your audit procedures or your strategy, audit plan, audit program? Have you brought in a concept of unpredictability? And in that case, whether the unpredictability has to be communicated with those charged with governance, it says your audit program, audit plan, audit strategy to be discussed with those charged with governance. But the unpredictability, you can keep it yourself. Okay. So that whatever you will be able to do that, or whatever you will do as an audit program, the client will be knowing that this is the way in which you will do the entire activity. And to that extent, how you will be able to validate that particular item is what we are looking for, right? So this communication with those charged with governance is also one of the important aspect of documentation, which is always missing in our activities. Then final analytics, of course, we don't do this, or maybe I can say that we do this, but we don't document this. But during my articles period, I have seen that this final analytics is very, very critical. Even in a partnership firm, my audit partner, when I was doing my articles, when I'm giving him the financials, he normally works out some 2-3 ratios, like gross profit of ratio for the past year, gross profit ratio for the current year, net profit ratio for the last year, net profit ratio for the current year, consumption of raw material for the previous year, consumption of raw material for the current year. What is the consumption of stores and spares in the last year? What is the consumption of stores and spares in the current year? What is the fuel consumption and power consumption last year and current year? whether this is commensurate with the changes in the current year operation. Just that final analytics also shows sometimes some more work is still required to be done. So you have to document that final analytics also as part of your audit documentation. And more importantly, how you have reached your conclusion, that conclusion will be resulting in no qualification SA 700 or qualification which is based on SA 705. You are using some emphasis of matter or other matters as per SA 706. In all these cases, what is the actual audit documentation which you are having, which supports your view, is what is important, and that goes without saying. And of course, if it is a listed company, key audit matters as per SA 701 is also how you have observed the key audit matters, how you have selected the key audit matters, and what are all the audit procedure you have performed in respect of the key audit matters has to be properly documented, because to the external world, you are actually making this as an explicit document in the audit report. So this is on completion of the audit. Okay. And in fact, when we are talking about the communication with those charged with governance, what is the discussion on significant matters? What is the nature of the significant matters discussed? When you have done that, with whom you have talked to them? In fact, the auditing standard says there is no need for a formal presentation to be made. Even if you have conducted an oral meeting with those charged with governance, you can document the minutes of the meeting and put it in the record, so that the when and with whom the discussion has happened and what are all the matters discussed, it can be documented as minutes and kept it in your records. That is what the minimum expected documentation on communication with those charged with governance. So let us also look into, whenever we are talking about an audit documentation, whether the audit documentation is sufficient and appropriate. Two things we are talking about. One, whether it is sufficient, and second is it appropriate documentation. Let me take a simple example for you to understand. There is a debt which is outstanding to be collected for the past 2 years. Client says that it is fully collectible. How you will verify and how you will collect an audit documentation? You will check what is the basis in which management believes that it's fully collectible. It's the first question which we are looking for. And on that basis, we are looking into this first direction. So sufficient evidence. Say, for example, if I have subsequently collected that, no provision is required. Or subsequently, this particular party has given an undertaking, and that undertaking, say, for example, I have collected a bank guarantee which can be invoked at any point of time. The letter of credit which has been received or bank guarantee received is from a bank, acceptable, or the parent company has given a comfort letter and parent company is a reputed firm. All these things are sufficient audit evidence I have gathered in respect of collection of the particular data. Have I documented that in my documentation process? When I talk about valuation of trade receivable, no provision is required. Have I done that? That is actually saying sufficient and appropriate audit documentation on a timely basis is required. I have done the audit 1 month back. I was doing the other areas of audit and documenting after 2 months, because the audit was conducted for 2 months, and trying to complete my audit documentation. At that point of time, I may not remember everything. That is the reason why contemporaneous documentation is important. Simultaneously, or whenever you are doing the audit, contemporaneously, you also do the audit documentation. That is what is important, because it helps in quality of the audit and effective review and evaluation of the level of audit evidence which has been obtained and how the conclusion has been reached. Sometimes the audit evidence may not be adequate. The reviewer can actually make a comment saying that additionally look for this audit evidence, go and collect it, additional work to be performed is possible unless there is a timely documentation which is being done. Let us take a quick question for us to understand this concept of timely registration or timely documentation. The audit procedures have been performed or they have been performed on 12th April, completed on 15th April. Audit report was issued on 9th of April. So documentation has been completed on 15th of April, but audit report is issued on 9th May. Is it an example of timely documentation? Yes. Audit procedure is performed on 12th. Within 3 days, they have completed the entire documentation. It is an example or classical example of a contemporaneous documentation. Documentation should not be just to the near to the date of the audit report. I will wait till such time I issue the audit report is not the correct approach. Okay. So when we are talking about matters arising subsequent to the audit reports, we normally conclude what are all the additional audit procedure which was required after the date of my audit report, but before it's circulated to the shareholders. If I identify, normally a fraud might have happened or a regulator has identified or introduced an investigation. In those cases, I can actually, whether additional audit procedure is required or not required. If so, what is the additional audit evidence collected? What is the effect on my previous audit report, whether that has to be withdrawn, a new audit report has to be issued. Who has done the documentation, who has reviewed the documentation, everything has to be done on the subsequent audit quality or audit documentation on the subsequent event. Coming to the assembly of final audit file. Interestingly, there is a standard called SQC1, Standard on Quality Control, that says at the firm level, you should have a policy and procedure for the timely completion of the audit documentation and timely assembly of the audit documentation files. According to the standards on auditing, not more than 60 days from the date of audit report, you can go and make changes in your audit documentation file, or your audit files cannot be changed. Even in that case, 60 days after the date of audit report, you are permitted only to make administrative work. Say, for example, loose ends are tied up. I'm just discarding the old versions and only keeping the new versions. So those can be done, but not collecting a new audit evidence, because you have already issued an audit opinion. And if you're collecting a new audit opinion, audit evidence, you have issued an opinion without even doing your work. That will be considered. So they are saying shall not delete or discard audit documentation of any nature before the end of its retention period. You are not also allowed to remove the items or the audit evidence which you have collected. And what is the retention period is normally 7 years from the date of the auditor's report. That is what the quality control standard is talking about. This is more or less equivalent to what is the expectation of retention. And of course, now the Companies Act poses a challenge because it says 10 years you have to maintain the audit documentation. So that overrides the principles and standards on auditing. So 10 years is what you are maintaining. Let me just take another example. Is it true that all audit evidence required to support my audit opinion have been collected, but they should be documented prior to issuance of an audit opinion? So what it says is not collection of audit evidence. I collected all the audit evidence, but summarizing that, put it in a proper format, etc. Can I do that even after my audit opinion during the 60 days window available for assembly? So this area, what we normally think is it is not possible. You have to collect and document prior to the issuance of the audit opinion. But what it says is it's false. It is a best practice that you can keep your audit documentation completely done before you issue an audit opinion. But there are administrative work which you can do it, and accordingly, if the documentation is not fully collected, you are not permitted to collect an additional audit evidence and change the previous audit evidence, but you can do an administrative work. So this is something which we have to understand. That what is the best practice of audit documentation? Keep permanent files separately, temporary files separately, use checklist to ensure compliance with the various areas, train your audit team on a regular basis. In fact, now the articles progressive report, which we are supposed to submit at the end of the article period, you are supposed to say at what areas they have been given training. And of course, the new code of conduct is also concentrating on whether you are giving proper training to your audit team, how you are ensuring that quality for each of the engagement, quality at the firm level, how you are managing this, that efficient audit team members are there. There is one new initiative which has been started by the institute, which will become mandatory from 2022 April onwards. Audit quality maintenance. Yeah, that the minimum audit quality which has to be maintained. There is a separate activity which has been started for 21 March and 22 March. It will be only optional or recommended basis. From April 22, it is mandatory for each of the entity to maintain the quality. In one of the case, they are giving a score for making you to assess whether you are meeting the audit quality standards. And in that case, they have identified that there are some 89 points which has to be scored with respect to your team members. Out of that, 19 points are actually given for how you will train your audit team members, how you will make them having the expertise, etc. That is also becoming one of the new requirement to maintain the audit quality. And of course, this goes without saying, when you are in doubt, consult with your peers, consult with your senior, consult with your fellow partner, consult even the expert, consult, and your consultation should be part of your audit documentation is also one of the important point. And what is the way in which it has been reviewed by the senior auditor is also properly documented. So that brings us to the end of our discussion on audit documentation, SA 230. Maybe this is time for taking a small break. It is 6:42.
Yes.
We have 11 questions for this session. Would you answer after the break, immediately after the break, or would you like to answer them now itself?
We can answer the questions immediately after the break, sir, and then proceed on the next standard. Maybe we can take some questions. At this point of time, we will have a break of 10 minutes, and maybe we will assemble at 6:45, sir.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So friends, just have your cup of tea and get back in 10 minutes. We will go on to the next topics, that is SA 500 and SA 501. And also for the session, we have a secretary from ASB. I think the chairman would like to make that announcement. Chairman, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Bonu sir. And I would like to recognize the presence of Megha Saxena. She is a secretary of Auditing Assurance Standards Board, and she has helped a lot in designing this entire program. Ma'am, welcome to webinar. Thank you so much for joining. And I think she would like to present at least for 5 to 10 minutes on the initiatives of the Accounting Assurance Standards Board initiatives by the ICAI. Ramkumar.
Chairman, sir, Madam Vice.
Yeah, so I think Madam has joined.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Meghna ji, please unmute yourself and you can start speaking.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Welcome,
thanks for your kind words.
Yeah, thank you so much for your help.
So, sir, I have qualified. Thanks to all, sir. Thanks to the team, all the team members. The program has come up pretty well, and the Hyderabad team has worked very enthusiastically. That everybody can see, and the series of program, it's of its own kind, because we have never organized a program like this in previously 5 days continuously, and that too in the premium hours, right? So, sir, I would like to further add something about me, that I qualified my chartered accountancy and the management qualification in 2005, and since then I am serving my alma mater. So I am here since 2005. Sir, one thing, sir, since just give me a couple of minutes because I have switched the system due to some technical issues. Just give me 5 minutes or 2 minutes to upload my presentation so that we can start.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you,
sure.
sir.
Meanwhile, Chairman, I request you to announce about tomorrow's program.
சார் இப்போ ஒரு சின்ன ஒரு செஷன் தட் ஏஎஸ்பி செக்ரட்டரி பண்றாங்க. அது சார் சார் அது சார் 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 உங்க ஸ்கிரீன் ஷேரிங் கேன் யூ க்ளோஸ் தி ஸ்கிரீன் only then she can share.
Who has to close?
No, Ganeshan sir is supposed to close.
Speaker sir has to do it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sir, I was on mute. Sorry.
No problem.
Chairman, sir, I request you to make the announcement for about tomorrow's initiative taken by our managing committee regarding the program with doctors in the meanwhile.
Yeah. Thank you, Bonu sir, for reminding me about this tomorrow's program. Friends, we from Hyderabad, the committee, managing committee of SARC.
I am not.
And, hello? Yeah, ma'am, 1 minute, ma'am, 1 minute. So, yeah, we plan to organize a session with an experts talk on COVID issues. Friends, lot of sad issues we're seeing from the last 15-20 days, and losing a lot of young members for our fraternity. That's what our committee has decided to have some expert talk, because a lot of information is available on social media, so WhatsApp and Facebook and etc. But that may not be authentic or right information. So that's what we decided to hear from the experts. So we planned a program tomorrow by 11 o'clock to 12:30, where 2 expert doctors is going to come and speak on a COVID issues, and where we can ask our own doubts and we can take an authenticated information from the doctors. So request all the members to join, and if anybody from across India can also join, please SMS me so that I can share the link for this tomorrow's program. And I request Bonu sir to add something about this program.
The program is from 11 a.m. tomorrow to 12:30. We're having Dr. Visheshwaran and Dr. Mundada, who will be speaking
Ethan.
of the various aspects of COVID, and they'll be answering our questions also. In the initially, we will be allotting about 10 to 15 minutes to both the doctors. They will be talking about their experiences, and also they will talk about the present situation. Then subsequently, we as the moderators, we will post some questions to them, and they will be replying to those questions. In fact, additional doctor also is being tried by our Chinnamastan, the Vice Chairman of SIRC. If she joins, she will also chip in with her expertise. And I request all of you to join without fail, because it is a useful program. And especially Dr. Mandada is a pediatrician, and he will be discussing about the impact of COVID on children and also the pregnant women.
Yes, sir.
Since we are new to this wave which is affecting the children, I think his views and his advice will be of much use to us to take precautionary measures. I think the screen share has started. Over to Meghaji.
Over to Meghaji.
So there is, it is a free program, and I think, hope you have registered. Most of you are registered. We have sent the messages, and if you are not registered, I think I request the chairman to have the details on the slide, on the screen at the end of this seminar. He can share the link so that people can note down and they can register themselves.
Yeah, I'll share it, sir. Meghaji, over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, firstly, sir, I would like to inform that, sir, in the board, the board has issued many kind of COVID guidances in the form of the guidances, technical guides, and the announcement and advisory during the last year. So I would like to inform, using this platform, to every member that these kind of advisory announcements are still applicable, because we have been receiving queries from many members whether these the advisories issued last year are applicable this year also or not. So these advisories are still applicable. Secondly, sir, I would like to emphasize the manner of conducting the audit. Say, suppose the manner may be different this year, sir, due to COVID. In the COVID era, the significant changes, significant modification in the audit procedures are required to be done. Even the auditors are required to perform the alternative audit procedures in order to obtain the sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. So, but sir, we need to be very careful while performing these alternative audit procedures, because even in the uncertainties and the challenges which are posed by the COVID-19, our responsibilities remain same. So there should be no dilution, no non-compliance with regard to the standards in auditing. So our responsibilities are status quo. However, the circumstances has changed. Secondly, sir, I would like to inform, because we have been receiving the queries with regard to the applicability of the CARO also from various members, various part of the India. So in this regard, I would like to inform that since the MCA has deferred the applicability by its notification dated 17 December 2020 by a year. So now the CARO would be applicable for the audit of the financial year starting from April 2021-22. Right. So all may kindly note these things. So now can we start with the publication, sir? So I would like to thank the Chairman AASB and Chairman PRB for providing this opportunity to update the members on the publication, because we have not updated the members from previously. I think it's been years now. We have not updated about the publications and the initiatives taken by the AASB at such large gathering, because the number of times I was going through the participants and it is very, very overwhelming. So everybody would be aware about the clarifications, because we have issued a clarification regarding the authority which is possessed by the documents which are issued by the board. So documents may be in the form of the standards, maybe in the form of guidance note. However, our preface states that the standards are mandatory in nature and everybody is aware whether the Companies Act is applicable or not. But even for a small entity, the auditing all auditing standards applies. Even for the tax audit, whatever nomenclature is there, all auditing standard would be attracted. So, and as far as the guidance notes are concerned, though we have stated like that it is recommendatory in nature, but member has to follow, because in case if he deviates from those guidance notes, then he has to, first it should be an exceptional situation. Secondly, he has to note down those the subsequent procedures or the alternative procedures which he has performed in order to satisfy that why this guidance note would not be followed. Coming to the standards, till date 46 standards are there. So 38 are the standards on auditing, 3 are the review standards, 2 are the other assurance, and 2 are the SRS. So I'm quickly giving these counts to you because everybody might be aware. Just I'm quickly giving the flavor of it. So these are these. So the main thing which I am seeing, which we are as a board seeing, and we are getting this, queries from the FRRB, from the disciplinary committees also, because the members are not well updated on the SRS. So that's the reason we have now introduced such kind of programs to enable the auditors to equip with these kind of tools. Now coming to the statistics of the publications, maybe some members may be very much well versed with the website and the AASB's knowledge page also, and some might not be aware. So that's the reason we are just displaying here the publications and the quantum of work done by the AASB. So at least everyone should be able to use that. So as far as the guidance note are concerned, we have 4 specific guidance notes and the 32 generic guidance note. So though it is recommendatory in nature, but it has to be mandatory followed. For the other publication, whether it is the advisory or the announcement or the technical guide or the any other kind of guidances, these are of the recommendatory nature. In case even if you do not follow that, then you need to give the explanation. You need to record your reasons while making the documentation. But for the guidance note, I am saying, because the NAFRA and the disciplinary committee, they are taking it very seriously if you do not follow the publications of AASB. Implementation guides are 15 implementation guides are there. 3-4 implementation guides are not on the standards on auditing. Otherwise, I think around 12 implementation guides on the standards on auditing, which elaborate the standard. If you will read those guidance implementation guides, so you will get into you'll have the nerve of that standard. Then the other publications are also there, especially in this time, COVID publications we have issued. The generic, the industry-specific guidance notes are the bank, the stock exchanges, the GIC, and the LIC. For the other guidance note, these are of the generic nature. So we'll provide a list also to the participants of this. These are the 32 other guidance notes. Now coming to the implementation guides. These are the 15 implementation guides. All are on the standards except for 3 implementation guides are there on the non-standard subject. So these are the technical guides which are available, which are industry specific also. Recently, we have added the LFAR also here, the IFCFR also, which is applicable, which is particularly applicable with regard to the public sector bank audit. So RBI has also praised that. Now, other publication contains the handbook. Handbook is the Bible. Everybody is well aware. So the handbook is like this. But don't go on its size, but this is the Bible of the profession, I should say. Now the MCQs are there, which we have bifurcated each requirement in form of the MCQs, and they are very useful. In case if you'll read it, you'll not find that thing boring, and rather you'll be quickly grasp the requirement. Ready referencer is also there. We have also prepared the background material. We keep it. This time we have not updated because we have not organized the physical programs, but we keep on updating it. The part 3, it is very, very, very interesting in today's scenario. These are the COVID guidances. The separate section I have prepared to explain and to put more emphasis on the COVID guidances which are issued by the board. So these are the, we have issued for the review engagement also. We have issued the compendium of the auditing standards. It's a whole document. Whatever guidances, COVID guidances we have issued, it is coming in the form of this compendium also. Even in case if you are using it, it is sufficient. Subsequent events also we have covered. We have covered the auditors reporting with regard key consideration also. We have also issued a joint advisory with Accounting Standard Board, which covers up all major areas. Then the going concern is there. Then advisory for the statutory bank auditors is there. Use of the electronic signature, which we have only issued since this was the demand of the era. So we have quickly issued that advisory as per the need of the hour. The use of the electronic signature while signing the reports and the certificates. Now, coming to the major part, this is I think to keep pace with the system. This time, the chairman AASB has taken a very, very good initiative, I should say. He has introduced the digital learning hub. So anything, everything, in case if you are not interested in reading that paper and you get bored also, then you can have this digital, every resource is converted into digitized way there. And it is coupled with the video lectures and coupled with the question answers, MCQs. So in case if you'll do that, not only this, you'll have the knowledge, you will fulfill your requirement as far as the CPRs are concerned. So I'll quickly give you a brief of that. This is the link which is available, at which the digital resources are available of the AASB. We have many courses, around 11 courses, which are available in the digital learning hubs. These are the structured hours and the unstructured hours. These are the courses across which we have bifurcated the structured hours and the unstructured hours, which are available, which will be granted to the members who will pursue it. So that's what. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Wonderful, wonderful, really, and updating us, the other members. And we should know what are the publications and what are the efforts is putting by the AASB board. And thanks to Chairman G. Shekhar sir, and thank you so much for Megha ma'am for updating us on the publications. And we appreciate your efforts, ma'am. During the pandemic time, also all your people are coming to our head office and working there. And most of you are already
Sir, you are on mute, sir.
Sorry. And thank you so much, ma'am, for updating us on publications and your resources. Particularly, we are very much happy with the digital resource, ma'am. You are giving a video and audio. That is very much helpful for us. And that's what I'm saying. We are very much thankful to ASB board on continuous updation. And this year, even the COVID times also, you people has worked a lot. I know what is the situation at head office because we are daily contacting you people. And what almost every one of our head office staffs there, almost everybody's got issue with the COVID. Still, then they're working a day and night. And hats up to entire team from ICI. Really wonderful efforts, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you all the participants for having the patience and hearing
with
us.
the permission of the chairman, can I add something on Megha's
Please,
presentation?
most welcome, sir. Most.
Ms. Megha, I should thank you for the wonderful effort of WASB in ensuring that the members are completely empowered with the knowledge and technical skill sets, including the various tools which are made available. Especially, I'm still using that particular advisory which you have given in last COVID situation for distance audit and remote audit. I'm still using for normal listed company audit also. So the way in which WASB is working, especially with the entire office team of WASB, is a really a fantastic job. And in fact, the way in which they are coming out with the publications within the particular issue has came out, maybe within 15-20 days it came out. Even Caro 2020 also, the way in which they have structured the entire discussion across all the regions, they have split the classes and compiled that entire thing, brought that notification, and of course it was deferred. But even before that, we were ready with the technical publication. Fantastic effort, Megha. Being a passionate auditor, I wanted to appreciate the efforts of WASB. Please communicate to the chairman as well as your entire team.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
And we are sincere thanks to entire your team, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks to entire Hyderabad team, sir, for doing such beautiful efforts, sir. Thank you.
Ma'am, I think if you can stop sharing the screen, the speaker will start sharing his screen. Sir, can we take questions?
Yeah, I will start with the questions and Q&A, sir. First, we will complete the Q&A and then we will move on to the other one. Some questions which has been came is actually what is there in the minds of every professional. The first question from Prabhagar: can I just make documentation intelligently drafted that suggests that I have made the required compliances without actually doing so? Sir, whatever you have put on the board, I fully agree with that, that you can intelligently do a documentation. But my experience over the past 38 years as an auditor has proved me very strongly that without doing your work, you cannot have an intelligent documentation. It will be a cut paste of the best documentation, but it will not be exactly talking about what exactly is the work has been done. I have seen cases where an intelligent documentation has been done by one of the team members, where we were reviewing that file. We have seen that team member was talking about something like amortization of the oil reserves. we were shocked because we were doing an audit of a manufacturing company of auto ancillary. He is talking about amortization of the entire crude oil reserves which are available. Then the first question which we have asked is that where that audit team member was doing his audit in the last engagement. He was doing an oil and gas company. So sometimes we believe that we are doing an intelligent work. Unfortunately, we will get caught. That is a simple psychology. Even where we are doing an investigative work, we believe that some trace of errors will always be there. And that trace will show that you have not done the work. So I don't vouch that particular scenario, sir, because I have seen that intelligent work has been unearthed. I will even share a beautiful example. We have reviewed internally one of the work done by another engagement partner as part of the quality review work. And when we were validating a particular item, he has documented that these are all the evidences collected, etc., etc. And all those things has been properly documented, beautiful documentation. But only one thing which has been done by the review team, maybe my assistant who has done the review according to my direction, because I was leading that entire team, they have only gone into the attachment in the electronic form and seen what is the property of the particular document. The property of the particular document has shown that the document was edited after the issue of the audit file. The date of edit of the particular audit documentation file is actually after the date on which we have communicated this file has been picked up for quality review. So that means the intelligent way of doing an audit documentation will never help, sir, because doing a truthful job, doing a faithful activity, doing a professional work at the appropriate time is the best way of doing it, and nothing else will help. And another question which has come from Jerome is that when there are so many boards in ICA and regulations to check our work, why in India the availability of software of audit program and documentation are not available? Some framework in software will save time and quality. Sir, I think that Mega has already put down these points, saying that what are all the initiative which has been taken by WASB, and WASB along with the audit quality management team is also working on what is the software related things which can be done to speed up the work. Only restriction which the institute is having, that if the institute has supplied a software, people will simply say that you have done it, we have checked it, and accordingly our audit has been done in accordance with the software supplied by the institute. So they don't want to take that particular scenario. Somebody will be really using it properly, but somebody will be just trying to piggyback on the work done by that. That is the only area where of concern. Otherwise, the institute is also working on this accounting software. In India, a lot of softwares are available, frankly speaking, to assess you to do a lot of work. In fact, we can actually do the entire audit using some analytical tools. Like even in Microsoft Excel, you have what is called a power query. You can do millions of records and assess the entire thing if you are able to put on a query of what could be an exception. So your entire audit, which you are doing manually, can be even computerized without any big deal. It is possible. So efforts are being done. And in fact, I have seen certain advertisements are coming in from Jaipur or somebody who says 3 months audit can be done in 30 seconds. I think that that type of effort is being put on. Whether 30 seconds you will be able to do it, or it requires 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 30 minutes, that is a different ballgame, but efforts are on there. And Prabhakar sir has asked another question. Sometimes even a small...
Last 3 questions. You can combine them and give a... Prabhakar has asked 3 questions, sir. So
sir, I will answer those questions. I will answer those questions because each question is in a different perspective. So if I combine the question, all the 3 questions, I will take it out for Prabhakar. One by one, I will answer. What he is saying is that even a small deviation of less than 5% can be highly risky. Permissible deviation is a judgment issue. Sir, I just wanted to tell you, please refer to the standards on materiality. Proper guidance is available. What is material, what is not material. they have given qualitative factor and quantitative factor. On that basis, you need not consider less than 5% as a risky element, because if your judgment has been properly recorded in accordance with the SA 320 on materiality, you will be on dot. Second question which Prabhakar sir is asking, documentation are internally prepared by auditors. To what extent they can legally support an auditor? So when you are talking about an audit documentation, you are gathering audit evidences which are external audit evidences, internal audit evidence from the client, and that supports how you have completed your audit process. So that evidences, audit evidences will support that you have done the work in accordance with the minimum requirements of the standards on auditing at least. So accordingly, it will definitely help you on that particular scenario. What is the event occurring after the balance sheet date? Is it any significant event? Yes, sir. It is significant event. For example, one trade receivable bankruptcy has occurred. They have filed for insolvency and bankruptcy court, or the company has some sort of going concern issue, maybe because of COVID-related issues, like when you are assessing it. All those events are to be considered. That's what significant event. And Banu Deja is asking a question: when the management is appointing the actuary or independent valuer for actuarial valuation or assessing the net selling price of PPE, whether he is a management expert defined under in SA 500 or auditor's expert as defined in SA 620. I must first thank you for making this differential between auditor's expert and management expert. Normally, when we are saying auditor's expert, my own team members who are having a specialized skill is covered by SA 620. For example, an information systems auditor whom I'm using for the purposes of my additional comfort could be an auditor's expert. Maybe I'm using a valuation expert to validate the impairment testing done by the client is an auditor's expert. Whereas the management expert is an actuarial valuation, could be a management expert because I'm not appointing. But at the same time, I'm checking whether the expert work can be relied upon or not. Actually, SA 600 series is talking about relying on the work of an expert, etc. When you are looking into that particular area, you can see whether you can rely on the work of an expert based on what is the objectivity, what is the experience, what is their independence. That is the basis. Even though management appoints an actuary, if an actuary is an independent actuary, when you are validating the actuarial assumptions and the base data, you can get a comfort. And the next question is, what is the impact on my audit if I cannot assess my client site to perform walkthrough and internal control testing during the COVID-19 times? It's actually Shyamala has asked this particular question. I will strongly urge, I was mentioning to Mega with respect to one particular point, they have come out with an advisory during the bank audit season of March 2020. They have given one advisory in which they have given a very great guidance on how to do your entire work remotely and what are all the considerations you have to have. Please look into that particular literature. It gives you perfect guidance. In fact, I use that guidance even for my normal audit where I could not go and visit a client site. For example, in March 2020, we are not able to travel because of the restrictions which has been imposed in Tamil Nadu to go to Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. Some of our clients were there. So they have said that EPAS is required. When we have applied for EPAS, they have rejected the EPAS. So certain work has been done based on the client's activity. In fact, what is the work you have done? We have put under other matters paragraph in our audit report saying that the data has been as provided by the management. Management has given a confirmation that the data is complete and it is accurate and correct as per the records generated from the system. So we got a specific confirmation on that. But again, that information is coming from the guidance which has been issued by the WASP. I urge you to look into that. That will help you, Shyamala, on many of the aspects which you have asked for. Jerome, thank you for making a lot of intelligent questions on this. You also asked to highlight on SA 510. SA 510, basically, when you are taking a new assignment, how to validate the opening balances, whether you have a requirement to do the validation of the opening balances for issuing your audit opinion. That is exactly it's coming in. In fact, when we are talking about two aspects, one is when I do the validation of the opening balance, without that, I cannot do the comparative number, right? So accordingly, minimum audit procedure, the auditor has to do according to SA 510. That is what the requirement. And in fact, Pushkaraj is asking how you have taken that as an exceptional item instead of prior period expenses. Fortunately, that is not during the Ind AS period. It is before that particular period, where prior period items are not there. It is, frankly speaking, it is before the Schedule 3 scenario. It is Schedule 6 scenario revised. So we have taken that particular stand. Can we get all this publication in digital form as ebooks? Mega, on your behalf, I will communicate that all these items are downloadable from the institute website. Especially go to the standing committee WASB, and in WASB they have listed out all the publication you can download in e-form and use it as your digital library when you are going to the client place. In fact, I use that particular method, including the auditing pronouncement, which big book which Mega has shown, that can also be in downloaded form. That is what the greatness of the institute nowadays. They believe that digital way in which you can do the entire audit, it should be supported in digital way, and that is also available for you. And can a membership of a CA be cancelled on a complaint filed by a company in which he was an employee on account of unauthorized access and manipulating the papers of organization? Anonymous attendee. Maybe the question is also anonymous to our particular session. But anyway, I will answer this particular question. This particular question is relating to your code of ethics. If that particular employee is a chartered accountant and he is a member of the institute, there are Schedule A and Schedule B of the Code of Conduct, which talks about what is the Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4 of Schedule A, and Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 of Schedule 3 of the Code of Conduct, in which Part 2 of Schedule A and Part 2 of Schedule B are talking about what is the Code of Conduct relating to an employee who is a chartered accountant, who is a member in the industry. So to that extent, if I conclude that he is actually a chartered accountant in employment, it can be cancelled. Okay, and apart from that, he can also be taken for other disciplinary actions as well. And James Kuti Anthony is having, in audit of most of the SME clients, most of the communications are oral. Even if you ask queries through mails, the client will call up and explain it orally. Similarly, most of the communication between my staff and client staff will be oral. How can I document all these things? Sir, again, on behalf of Mega, I will suggest one more beautiful literature which WASB has come out along with the Committee for Members in Practice, SME Practice. They have talked about a practitioner's guide for smaller audit engagement. In that, they have given a lot of guidance on how you can handle such a situation for smaller audit. It can help you on that particular scenario. And again, anonymous attendee is, can a statutory auditor of private limited company sign provisional financials of the same company? Sir, when we are talking about provisional financials, there are certain guidances. There is a standards on auditing which was specifically talking about. You can please take that particular standards on auditing. It gives a guidance. Based on that, you can sign the provisional financial statement as well. But in provisional financial statement, you are not confirming the assumptions made by the engagement. You are not signing on the numbers. Okay, please go into that standards on auditing. And Srinivas Rao is asking, is there any template for audit documentation? That is what I am trying to say, that, sir, please look into that guidance which is coming as practitioner's guide for smaller audit engagement, in which they have used a lot of checklist. That checklist is almost like a document template for you to use it. Please use that and you will be there at what is required. Can I record the telephonic discussions and document the same with respect to the client? My only suggestion is, please see whether you are breaching the privacy of the client. That's the only thing which I would like to see. Otherwise, talk to the client that I am recording this and then record it and make use of that as your digital documentation. That is okay. Otherwise, I don't think that without client's knowledge, if you're recording, you may be pulled in for the privacy related issue under cyber crime also. Be ready for facing that type of situation. So I think that concludes our questions relating to SA 230. And what we will do now is we will go through the.
1 minute.
I think Murli sir wants to add something.
Please, sir. To speak for a while. Murli Krishna,
Yeah, please, sir. Please.
Chairman and Speaker, I just happened to notice that question from, I don't remember the name of the gentleman, where he was talking about whether an intelligently prepared audit documentation will serve the purpose of documentation. I think what he's meaning to say is, can we prepare the documentation in an intelligent manner so that it appears to serve the purpose even without doing the work? That's the specific question he's asking. I think that's a very disastrous approach. The times are over.
Actually, address this particular question, sir. Actually,
yes, you did. You did, Ganesh. I acknowledge that. But when we talk about auditing today, there's no room for being nice and courteous, because there are so many people who are standing around us who are ready to chop off our heads. And one member's head chopped off is equivalent to the entire profession's head being chopped off. Our reputation is at stake. So we do not have the opportunity to be very nice and courteous to our own members. Please bear with me for being so blunt. I do not know who that member is, but the very fact that he's stating at this forum whether he can do something intelligently so that it appears to serve the purpose without actually doing it, I think it's a very disastrous thing. In these times, you know what the powers under the Disaster Management Act are. It's as disastrous and as troublesome as that. Please do not take chances, because as I'm repeating, I've said this yesterday, day before, and the day before also in this forum, any effort to present yourself as meeting the requirements and not meeting them, while not meeting them actually, and trying to get off with some kind of a flimsy justification or a defense, will not serve the purpose, will not serve you, will not save you. And it's not the moment somebody does something, the first thing that comes in the paper is that their auditor has colluded with them, their auditor has been an accomplice to this crime. And there are also many clients who we have seen will go and say that, I do not know, sir, this is the advice that I got from my auditor. So please be extremely cautious. Don't take any chances. Don't take any chances. And any attempt to do this will tarnish. I'm glad Daya has joined. I'm sure he has a lot of things to say on this. Any attempt to compromise, you're sacrificing your profession. You're also sacrificing the image of the profession at large, of the entire profession of chartered accountancy. And I think you have no right to do that. Please bear with me if I've been a little too harsh.
Well said, sir. Well said, sir. And I think
Nice, sir.
you have answered.
Chairman, with permission, Ganesh sir, with permission, can I add?
Yeah, please, sir.
Please, sir, please.
Yeah, if just for a moment, if you can just stop sharing, it will be, if you can stop sharing, if possible. One of the most important part when we are actually going back to ensure that the chartered accountant certificate has all the authenticity, and institute is standing with you as a member to hold and give the confidence in form of UDIN. One side, we are actually with the profession at large who is doing right work. But friends, let me tell you, last to last year, the number of disciplinary cases which have gone in favor and against also are huge number. Today, Institute is looking totally things from a different perspective, and exceptions have to be punished. That is the idea and agenda with which we are moving forward. Error or an omission or unintentional thing can be pardoned to certain extent, not to the full extent. But today the fact is, Today, Ganeshan sir, rightly said by Murali sir, I'm really thankful to him that a senior member like him is so loud and clear rather than shying away from expressing his opinion and telling the fact. Today, what is happening is in the disciplinary bench, there are 5 members who are sitting. 5. So one happens to be the president or vice president, 2 happens to be the council members, and 2 happens to be the government nominees. So please don't explore these kind of things in the entire process, because this profession has stood all throughout for its goodwill and respect. So might be if anyone had that sparking thought, just cut it off. Don't move forward.
I think that the thought has been doused in the initial stages itself by all the experts here. Sir, I think you should continue with your
Presentation,
next
sir.
session.
Yeah.
Okay.
505.
Okay, sir. So we have 2 more standards to cover, but I will just make that as simple as possible because we have another 30 minutes is to cover at the maximum. So within that, how we will try to do the justice on these 2 standards. It's a very simple standards. First standard is on SA 500, how you will collect audit evidence. Nothing is great as far as this standard is concerned, because we are talking about an audit evidence which will support the conclusion which the auditor has reached. And that is what the auditor is collecting as an audit evidence. This is the definition which has been given in that respect also. But only thing which the standard is expecting that the quality of the audit evidence or the quantity of the audit evidence, or let us use the word sufficiency of the audit evidence, depends upon the auditor's assessment of the risk of material misstatement. Maybe a judgmental point again. When I'm talking about an audit being done, the question which comes to me is, I have audited the client for the past several years, and there is no question of audit adjustments coming in. Client is actually following the requirements of the laws, regulations, complies with the Companies Act. There is no deviation which we have seen, no mistakes or very big mistakes which we have seen. Then the risk of material misstatement seems to be low, right? The sufficiency or the quantity of the audit evidence which I can try to collect will be depending on this qualitative factor that the client's business is straightforward, no risk of material misstatement, so I can reduce the level of rigor with respect to the particular level of audit efficiency. And what is the quality of the audit evidence, whether it's internal documentation or external documentation? I get a direct confirmation from the bank, or I get a confirmation through the client. All those things decides what is the quality of the audit documentation or audit evidence which I will collect. That is also another matter. And again, what is the materiality relating to that particular item is also decides whether it is sufficient. In fact, the way in which the audit evidence has been used, it is not using the word just evidence. It is not using the word just audit evidence. It is not using the word just appropriate audit evidence. It is actually using the word sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So your audit evidence should be sufficient, it should be appropriate. So for the given decision which you are taking out, you should have an appropriateness of that. For example, if I'm talking about a debtor will be collected or not collected, I'm looking for a valuation, right? Suppose if the debtor is giving a confirmation letter saying that, yes, I owe 20 lakhs to this company, but the amount, whether it is an appropriate audit evidence for collection of that money and for valuation, definitely no. It will only give a comfort that this debtor is existing. But the valuation, whether provision is required or not, is based on other audit evidences, subsequent collection, the credit worthiness of the particular trade receivable, etc., is what we are looking for. Sufficient, appropriate audit evidence is what SA 500 is talking about. And of course, based on the risk of material misstatement and what is the characteristics and size of the population. When I do a sample checking, whether the sample which I have selected will be representative of the total population, any errors can I project to the entire population is also based on the audit evidence which I'm looking for as a sufficient, appropriate audit evidence. There are some terms which has been collected. One is the materiality, and another is the risk of material misstatement, and of course the size of the population. All these things are basically a well-known factor, so I need not explain further on this. Let us look at the appropriateness of the quality of the audit evidence, how it will be matured, from where you are getting that, what is the source from where you are getting the audit evidence, what is the nature of the audit evidence, what is the individual circumstances. Again, a lot of judgments may be there depending upon the particular audit procedure, what I'm supposed to do. Let me just take that audit evidence. These are all the examples of audit evidence, so there is no need for explaining this. But the reliability of the audit evidence is, when I'm taking management expert, we have discussed that what is his competence, capability, objectivity, we have explained that. That is the way in which you are looking for performing your audit procedure for the purposes of collecting the particular audit evidence. I'm not doing the recalculation of actuarial valuation, but I'm checking the basic data given to him, the various assumptions which we have used, and what is the objectivity, capability, and individual independency of the client, of the expert. I'm taking all those aspects as part of the reliability of the audit evidence. In fact, when we are talking about the information which has been provided, we are looking for two things. One is accuracy and completeness. In fact, when we are talking about accuracy and completeness, you remember that I was mentioning about a guidance which has been given during the COVID situation in 2020. The data which has been received from the client should be complete in all respect. If that data is generated from the system, we have the control over the completeness and accuracy of the data provided. In fact, in one of the particular client situation, the data is imported to an Excel sheet, and the data has been adjusted by the particular finance manager, and later on that information is provided to the auditor. And the auditor, if he has completed the entire audit based on the manipulated Excel spreadsheet, he may not have identified the proper audit evidence. The auditor has only one single additional audit agenda. If any report is generated from the system, I wanted to take a printout from the system, compare that with the Excel format which has been given to me. In that case, they have identified the deviation and found out that it is an intentional way of making some adjustment for some particular desired result by the finance manager. So the accuracy and completeness of the information which provided by the entity is also decides what is the audit evidence which I have collected from them. In fact, when we are talking about audit procedure, I normally make a risk assessment procedure out of which I will decide what type of audit evidence I have to collect. With respect to other procedure, I do test of controls or test of details, that is verification of the documents. In that also I collect the audit evidence like vouching or a validation of the balances for verification. In fact, when I'm doing the risk assessment, it is based on what type of risk relating to that. What are all the areas where there could be a possible weakness in the internal control, which will result in the risk of material misstatement to the financial statement also I assess. And when we are talking about the various procedures for obtaining audit evidence, you can conduct an inquiry with the management. Management gives somebody has made that. Majority of the work which I performed with my client, which is SMP, it's oral. You can make an inquiry, but only thing is whatever client has given, you have to have a corroborative audit evidence supporting the management view. Have you collected that is what is helping to you. And observation, depending upon what is the nature. For example, physical verification of inventory is being conducted. You just do an observation of what the management is doing. You are not actually doing the counting. You are only doing a sample check of certain items to ensure that completeness is being ensured. You observe that the entire process is another way of collecting an audit evidence. You can inspect the agreements, documents, and various significant contracts based on which whether the accounting of a particular transaction is proper or not. You inspect the underlying document and the related accounting. That is inspection. You can collect audit evidence based on inspection technique. You can recalculate what the client has calculated and given to you. For example, depreciation has been calculated by the client. You re-perform the depreciation calculation and identify that there is no difference between what you have calculated and what client has accounted in the books of accounts. Recalculation could be another thing. Analytical procedure, I have explained that you set your own expectation based on independent expectation and decide how you wanted to analyze. And analytical procedure also has another simple technique. For example, when I'm talking about rental expenses being validated, a simple process which we do is that what is the per month rent and what is the agreement says and what is the period of occupancy. Multiply that should be my rental expenditure in the P&L. I use some analytical procedure. That is also an area by which I can collect an audit evidence. I get an external confirmation of the balances sitting in my P&L account. I can go for closing balance confirmation. I can go for a statement of account from the other party. So all these things are external confirmation, another audit evidence process. Another thing is re-performance of the entire work. So one is recalculation. I'm just checking the arithmetical calculation. Re-performance is management has done certain assessments. Say, for example, they have assumed certain factors for calculating provision for warranty. Based on the same assumptions, when I re-perform the entire activity from the base data, I get the same number or not. So that is a re-performance. These are all the techniques by which you can collect the audit evidence. Knowingly or unknowingly, we use these techniques in collecting our audit evidence required, but only problem is this may not have been properly documented. So whatever learning which we had in SA 230, use it for the purposes of our doing it. And whatever I have talked about in your audit documentation, I talked about management is giving certain assertion or promises that this is what has happened. So in respect of balance sheet items, they are giving certain assertion. In respect of P&L, they are giving certain assertion. In respect of disclosure, they are giving an assertion. For example, in balance sheet, they are saying this particular transaction or event has actually occurred. For example, when talking about class of transaction, a particular transaction, whether it has happened during the period and it is pertaining to the particular industry, they are giving a concurrence. All the transactions relating to the current period has been fully accounted in the current period. Completeness is being ensured. Accuracy of recording the transactions in the various classification, etc. Cutoff is recorded in the particular period. For example, I have explained sales is being verified based on taking the last few transactions, whether dispatches have been happened, risk and rewards of ownership has been passed on to the customer. Cutoff procedure is also verified for the particular transaction to ensure that it's accounted in the correct accounting period. And the transaction has been properly classified into a respective account classification. So we are checking an audit evidence to prove this assertion, which is given by the management to be correct. On that basis, we assume that the transactions are properly recorded. When we are talking about the account balances, that is the assets or liabilities, we are looking for whether the asset is existing, whether the liability is existing as on the balance sheet date, whether a trade receivable is really a genuine trade receivable or not. We are just trying to check whether it is existing on the date of the balance sheet. Rights and obligation. If it is an asset, whether I have control over the asset, whether I have over the right over the asset, that I am getting the audit evidence to prove that. For example, in CARO also, you are trying to say whether the title deeds in respect of immovable properties are held in the name of the company. Why? You wanted to ensure that the rights over the asset has been properly kept. Obligation is in respect of a liability, whether it is really pertaining to that particular entity or not. You are assessing that particular liability. Completeness is all the assets, all the liabilities, all the equities are properly recorded and fully recorded within the particular period. And valuation and allocation, that is an important aspect when we are talking about trade receivable or inventory or any other asset or any other liability. What we are looking for is whether it is valued properly. For example, gratuity provision, whether valued property, warranty provision, whether valued property is relating to liability, whether provision for doubtful debts has been made relating to trade receivable, inventory has been validated, cost or net realizable value, whichever is lower, again valuation of inventory, whether the property, plant and equipment requires an impairment testing, again that is a valuation. So you are looking for the assertions relating to the account balances as well as an audit evidence. You are trying to identify for a particular account balance whether these assertions are met. If that is met, your objective, test objective has been reached or concluded positively. Then goes into the next case of the disclosure. Whether the particular event has occurred and requires a disclosure, you go into that. Whether there is a right relating to an asset, how it is established, you wanted to make a disclosure. In respect of your obligation, what are all the related disclosure for the user to understand, you make the disclosure. Completeness of the entire transactions or disclosures relating to that transaction and account balances have been included in the financial statement. Again, the valuation of the accuracy. For example, how you have done a valuation of a particular asset or a liability, you will explain as part of your notes and accounts, whether that disclosure is also accounted for. When we are talking about the reliability of the audit evidence, the reliability increases in certain cases, but the reliability decreases in certain cases. You will understand very clearly. If I identify from independent source outside the entity, for example, it is external from the client, there is a possibility. For example, I get this sales invoice in respect of a property, plant and equipment purchased by the entity from the supplier, that is an external source. If the client gives a voucher saying that this is the amount I have spent, then it's an internal source. So it decreases the reliability. Controls are operating effectively. I can rely on the controls based on which my reliance on the evidence is also increasing. When the evidence is obtained directly from the external sources rather than through the client, it actually reduces. That's the reason why confirmation of bank balances, we are circulating directly to receive it rather than getting it from the client, because client also gets a confirmation of balance and supplies that. For a smaller entity, it may be okay, but for a bigger entities, it is always advisable to get it directly. And when it is given orally, for example, in one of the questions which they have talked about, many of the evidences I collect is orally, reliability of the audit evidence actually decreases. So extent of the audit documentation will be much higher in case of oral evidence which you have collected, whereas if it is in written form or documentary form, it increases the reliability. And when you have validated the original document which has been produced to you, your reliability increases, whereas the copies are produced, reliability decreases. The only problem in a COVID-19 situation, majority of the cases may be scanned copies or digital copies, and original may not have been made available because you will not be able to practically go and verify. In those cases, what is the required caveat you wanted to include? Please include that particular caveat as given by the guidance in various COVID-related advisories issued by the WASP. And that is what your audit evidence. Coming to the special consideration, there are three areas they are talking about special consideration. One is on inventory, another is on litigation and claims, and third is on segment information. When we are talking about the inventory, the main reason why this particular standard is talking about is majority of the client inventory will be the major item of the asset. And accordingly, the importance which they have given is relating to existence of the inventory asset the year end. Two things they are talking about. One is existence and the quality of the inventory. How you can manage that? By attending the physical inventory counting. The question which comes to us is it mandatory that the auditor should attend the physical inventory counting? The answer is yes, because in CARO 2020, you are giving an assurance that the management has conducted a physical verification of inventory, and the procedure adopted for physical inventory are reasonable considering the size and nature of the industry. How you will decide that the procedure of physical verification is considered to be reasonable? Only if you are observing, and to that extent, it is mandatory for attending physical inventory counting. Whereas physical verification of fixed asset, auditor are not having a mandatory requirement to attend that inventory, that physical count of fixed asset. So when we are talking about attending the physical count, we have to see the management instruction and procedure for recording and controlling the results of the counting. Say, for example, first they have taken out the complete list of the inventory from the computer system and use that inventory listing for verification. And then using this, tick off all the items which has been already counted and tagged. Maybe in a smaller entity, it may be a simple day of walkthrough, or in a bigger industry, it may be area-wise, you require a people. They might have already completed the counting and matched with that. You just check that particular area where they have put a particular tag saying that this bin contains so many numbers, tick that number. But at the same time, whether that counting done by the management is correct or not, you will do a test count. How you will do the test count? The procedure which has been given in SA 501 says you will take some samples from the list given to you and check whether these items are appearing on the floor, that is available on the area physically where you are counting, right? What is available on the floor? First, you are taking the from the listing to the floor, we call that as a tag to floor, which we are actually checking. List to floor also another way of doing it. And okay, in the listing, whatever item which is there in the floor, that is physically available. But all the items available physically is included in the list or not. That is another possibility is also there. For that purpose, you take another set of samples from the floor and check whether they are there in the list. That is what you are doing, a perform test count. And then check whether that is reconciled with the physical stock and the book stock. And again, whether there is any discrepancy. If so, whether it has been properly accounted for. That is the reason why attending the physical inventory count is essential first. Second thing is, what is the condition of the inventory? Whether it is slow moving, non-moving, rusted, it should be scrapped. All those things can also be identified only when you are observing the physical inventory count. So that is another important area of the this one is the quality and another is whether it completely accounted for. So that is what, as part of that, what is the procedure to be adopted during the physical count is actually given in that list. And what are all the matters to be counted? What is the nature of inventory? When you are decided which area you wanted to select. For example, the entity is having multiple locations where you wanted to do it. You can decide what is the nature of the inventory, whether WIP is there, and whether there is any material misstatement relating to the industry in the inventory, whether there are any internal control, whether adequate procedures are already established and proper instructions has been given. So those are all the matters which you have to consider. And again, the factors to be considered is what is the timing of physical inventory counting. It may be after the year end, or it may be on the date of year end, 31st March, or subsequent to that, or it may be a perpetual inventory counting. Every month, the client is doing a cyclical count of one particular area. You participate in the cyclical count, and that is also matching with the records. So based on the cyclical count, you can document that you are comfortable with respect to the physical inspection of the inventory which is existing as on the balance sheet date. Sometimes you are not able to do the physical inventory counting on 31st. You can do a subsequent period counting and do a roll backward process, like what we do in case of bank audit, where we go on 7th of April and we count the cash balance and do a reverse working and see what is the balance as on 31st March. Whether that matches, then this also matches, right? Similarly, what is the number of jewel packets which we are verifying? Similar basis, you do a test count or physical count as on 31st, subsequent to the year end, and do a roll backward process. Sometimes the client will also say, you have to do a roll forward process. For example, I have done a cyclical count in February. From February to March, what are all the inputs and outputs which has happened? You can do a roll forward process also, and based on which you can document, but requiring a proper documentation. So that's what I'm saying. Roll forward procedure or roll backward procedure, you will apply that. There is no mandatory requirement that you have to do only on 31st, not on the reporting date. It can be before that or subsequent to that, but you have to do additional audit procedure. Suppose the auditor is unable to attend the particular physical count, so he has to observe on an alternate date. Suppose And he has to do a reconciliation procedure, like we have said, talked about backward working. So in fact, in last year audit report in Caro, 3-4 cases where we are not able to participate. Subsequently, when in June they have lifted partially the travel restriction, we asked the client to conduct a physical inventory during that period, ask them to do the rework. We have documented the entire thing in our audit documentation as well as in Caro reporting. So you have to do that particular activity. Suppose you have been totally not able to participate, you have to make a disclaimer in your audit opinion relating to that particular area. And sometimes the inventory may not be exclusive with the client. Sometimes the client may be having a warehouse facility, or sometimes the client may be doing a job work with a subcontractor where raw material may be supplied by the client and the finished product will be coming from them. They are doing only a job work activity. In that case, if it is lying with the third party, you are supposed to collect by means of taking a confirmation from the third party relating to existence of the inventory, what is the actual quantity and what is the condition, whether any provision is required for slow moving or non-moving or scrapping of any item. You have to get the confirmation from that. And you can also do an inspection of the particular subcontractor's premises if you believe that the stock is very high with the third party and the risk of material misstatement is very high. In that case, you can visit that third party places also with the authorization of the client and do that. It's like a stock audit which you are doing for bank purposes. You can do that also as part of this particular activity. That is relating to inventory. 501 says you have to observe the physical inventory to conclude on the existence and what is the quality of the inventory. If you are not able to participate, what are all the alternative procedures which you have to perform, how it should be reported. That is what first part of 501. Second part is litigation and claims against the company will be a major area of judgment, and completeness of the litigation and the areas also may be a problem of identification. And if there are any errors, this may result in a material misstatement also. So accordingly, how do you collect the entire information, inquiry with the management, and you discuss with the legal counsel, maybe in-house or outside legal counsel, get a confirmation from the legal counsel. In fact, in respect of bigger companies, one of the audit procedure people are normally doing according to SA 501 is that if there are tax litigation and the tax litigation are handled by a tax expert, normally bigger audit firms will not do the tax work and the audit work together because of the new restriction which has been brought in based on the code of conduct. So in that particular scenario, what they will do is they will ask the tax expert who is advising to give a confirmation of his assessment of the various litigations which are pending, whether in his assessment any provision is required to be made in the books or not, whether it is winnable case or they will lose the case, based on which any provision is required or not, that also they will do. And again, another interesting factor is we are saying review minutes of the meetings of those charged with governance, board meeting minutes, audit committee meeting minutes, will also have a compliance officer's report. That compliance officer will list out what are all the pending cases and what is the decision management thinks, whether they believe that this is a tenable case or it is not a tenable case, based on which also you will identify whether any litigation or claims requiring provision. In fact, this is a simple process which we normally do. Professional and consultancy charges. When you are taking the breakup, we ask them to give the name of the person to whom it is paid, what is the nature of the services rendered by the professional, and what is the amount. When we are talking about the nature of service, if it is a legal related service, we ask what is the legal case which he has represented and what is the related demand, show cause notice, or what is the outcome, whether it requires any claims. So that will also give you an evidence whether there is a requirement to identify a particular litigation or claim to be provided for. That is the guidance coming from SA 501. In fact, when I am talking to the external legal counsel, as I have said, in case if I assessing the risk of material misstatement is very high, I ask the external consultant to give a confirmation. And this confirmation, external confirmation communication is not sent by the auditor directly, because there is no contract between you and the external counsel, right? Accordingly, it will be prepared by the management with a direction to the external counsel for the purposes of audit. Send the confirmation directly to our auditor at so-and-so address. So once that authorization letter has been received from the management, like what we do for external confirmation as per SA 505, we will control the entire process, sending that to the external consultant and getting it from the external consultant, tallying with the various litigations and claims as received from the management. All those things, we will control the entire process. And of course, the letter is directly requesting to report to the auditors. When we are talking about communication with the external counsel, there are possibilities that law prohibits from communicating to that. In that case, you have to do an alternative procedure. And if there is one possibility, you have to do an alternative procedure. Another possibility is management or the legal counsel refuses to give confirmation. In that case, also you are supposed to do an alternative procedures. If you are not doing an alternative procedure by simply saying that I have circularized and I have not got it, whether it is acceptable as per 501, it says no. You are having the responsibility to do an alternative procedure only based on which you can actually conclude whether it is possible or not to have the litigation provided in the books or not. If alternative procedures is not possible, then the disclaimer may come into the picture. So that is what I'm saying. If I am unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, either by getting the direct confirmation or by an alternative procedure, then I have to think about whether I have to modify my audit opinion with a qualification or not. That is on litigation. The third element is segment information. How the segment has to be identified, how the reporting has to be validated. Guidance is coming from 501. And of course, segment reporting is applicable only for bigger companies. In respect of non-SMCs, it is applicable, not for small and medium companies. Basically, what you are trying to see is what is your MIS report, how the management is determining that there is a segment which is available. Based on that, you determine whether the reporting which they have done according to the standards, accounting standard, is also matching with that MIS report, is what you will do that. And whatever number which they have given, whether it is reconciled with the accounting records, is what you do. So that brings us to the end of our discussion on SA 501, one on inventory special consideration on litigation and claims, and thirdly, the special consideration, how the segmental information can be validated. So we come to the end of this. We will take certain questions also. At the same time, in case if there are some questions which is not answered, what you can do is you can get in touch with this number. I will be able to answer. I'm stopping the sharing of the screen and go into the questions which might have been there in the Q&A session. Answer these questions and then we can proceed further.
So just a minute, sir, before you go ahead with the question and answers, Jawahar sir would like to say something.
Yeah. What I suggest, Banu Garu, is let Ganeshan Garu finishes this thing and then we'll do it. Otherwise, it will come in between.
Fine, sir. You can go ahead with the question.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay. The first question is from Rakesh Gupta. In case of small entity audit, management representation and assertions are prepared by auditor and mailed to client. Client take printout on its letterhead, sign and send to us. Is it okay? If not, what precaution should auditor like? See, actually, the letter of representation is prepared by the management is what, because they are going to give the representation. Unfortunately, in a smaller engagement, they don't know how to prepare. So guidance which we are giving is not an issue at all. So only thing is, it is prepared only for the purposes of assisting the client on this, and client very clearly read this and signing on their own assessment that giving that management representation letter should be very clearly spelled out in that. That is not an issue. Daya sir, there is one question, you can address that. at a later point of time. Prabhakar sir was responding to something else. Renu is talking about many times creditors confirmation is not arranged by the company, or creditors choose not to respond on letters received sent by the auditor. How to deal with the situation? Sir, frankly speaking, if you see the external confirmation process on SA 505, mandatorily you have to get an external confirmation for trade receivable, loans and advances, and your bank balances and borrowings, but not for trade receivable payable. So trade payable is not covered on a mandatory basis. Only we are doing little bit of additional work to ensure the comfort on this. If they have not responded, please do your alternative procedure. Whether the trade payable is existence, you have an obligation on that. Whether the number has been completely taken into consideration. That's the reason why I listed the various assertion. Do that work. And another question on joint audit. We arrive at final conclusion for reporting. How do we create documents for evidence and document it? Usually minutes are not prepared and signed by all the auditors, just a meeting on video, etc. Sir, in this case, my suggestion, because when we do the joint audit, for example, for a bank and other things, we are especially asking that minutes to be recorded and signed by all the joint auditors. Because later on, one of the joint auditors should not say that I have not concurred with this view, because certain views are taken on a joint basis, that they are jointly responsible for it. The areas where they have done the audit on an individual basis, they are responsible for that particular area on a several basis. So that is what your standards on auditing on joint audit is talking about. So my suggestion is record this as a minute and get it signed. That is the best option. Second is, if it is being done by a video conference, again, my suggestion is today recording of the video proceedings is also possible. Ask them to do that video recording. That will help you to overcome this particular situation, because a joint audit is normally visualized for a bigger type of audit. In that case, your risk is very high. Regulators involved are also very high. And accordingly, please be careful in keeping all the documents to support at a later point of time if questions are raised by the regulators. Aditi is asking a question: in case of discrepancy, should a client be given an opportunity to relate or correct the figures before reporting? 100% sure, because you are not here to find fault. You are going to express an opinion whether the financial statement as a whole is materially misstated, either due to error or fraud. That's what your objective. So accordingly, when you observe there are errors or there are issues, you are actually taking it to the management to discuss with them. If they are passing the entry, then this is taken care. If they are not passing the entry for correcting it, you take a consideration whether it is material to the financial statement or not, on an individual basis as well as on aggregate basis. If in both the scenario, if you have concluded that it is not material, you will document as part of your management representation letter summary of unadjusted audit differences. There ends the matter. Your audit opinion need not be qualified. So that is what you are supposed to do. Necessarily, you have to discuss with the audit client. Sometimes what happens is we go with certain observation based on what our team members have done without even understanding the particular situation. Accordingly, it is always mandatory for you and a best practice for you to discuss with the observation with the client and then take a call. Rakesh is asking one question: in case of Caro reporting, title deed of immovable assets, if only sale deed is executed but name is not transferred in the record of industrial estate authority, whether it is sufficient, we have to qualify. Sir, actually, Caro report, I should use that word. It is a statement of fact. So there is no opinion you are giving. You are only giving a information which is factual. So accordingly, there is no qualification comes in Caro report. Please understand that. It is only a comment or remark or observation which is coming in Caro report. In this particular scenario where the name of the company is not transferred in the official records of the estate authorities, you have to brought that fact also as part of your response in the particular clause of the audit report. I will share one example where a partnership firm has been taken over by a private limited company, but the erstwhile land and buildings are in the name of the partnership, not get converted because the heavy amount of stamp duty will be involved. So we were continuously saying that this is standing in the name of the erstwhile partnership firm, which has been taken over as a going concern and formed, and based on which the private limited company has been formed. So it is necessary that you have to make that particular thing. Ganesh is asking a question. Generally, in case of SME, the auditor is hesitant to obtain balance confirmation from debtors and particularly creditors. Many times, even if the client requests for balance confirmation, the parties don't respond. Sir, if you go by SA 505, there are two scenarios which they are talking about. One is the positive confirmation and another is a negative confirmation. And they are also saying the scenarios where you have circularized for confirmation, but you have not got the response. What is the alternative procedure you have to perform? You have to perform the alternative procedure. So don't be hesitant to do a confirmation for a small and medium enterprises. If you believe that your risk of material misstatement relating to trade receivable or your bank balances, etc., are high. But for creditors, you can use your judgment whether it is really required or not, because it's not mandatory. Rakesh is asking another question, whether scanned copy of evidences in this COVID time will fulfill the para of audit report that we have obtained all necessary documentary evidences. We have to specifically mention that is what the guidance given by the institute, which says that we have done an audit in a remote basis without physical access to the audit documents, and to that extent the user should be aware that we have not verified the original document. So bring that as part of the other matters paragraph in the audit opinion, make that as a specific paragraph. That's what the guidance which is saying. So that will take care of your requirement as per the institute guidance. Another question is coming from Banu Deja. Can we insist internal auditor of the company to attend the physical inventory count in case the statutory auditor is unable to attend? Can we rely on the documentation provided by the internal auditor in forming the audit opinion? There is another standard on SA 600 series where relying on the work of an internal auditor is also there, where certain work can be delegated to the internal auditor and you can take a comfort. Similarly, you can ask the internal auditor to do certain direct work under your assignment. That is also possible. But there are guidances which are given in that particular standard. You have to follow that. But you cannot direct that insist that the internal auditor should appear for physical verification of inventory, because you don't have any authority over the internal auditor. It is your duty that you have to attend the inventory count. It is not a substitution. But if you are not able to attend for some reason, please document the reason and how you have got the confirmation that alternative procedure gives you existence and quality of the inventory. And Prabhagar is asking a question. In case of inventories with third party, is there if there are no confirmation coming from the third party, can an auditor, by making appropriate comments in this report, be deemed to have discharged his duty? So suppose if the client is not allowing you to visit that party for inspection, they are restricting it. It may be a scope limitation. If third party is not confirming, but you got the confirmation by an alternative procedure, for example, 300 items are there, each is valued at say for 30 lakhs at the year end. And subsequently, the 300 items has been mentioned as part of the sales by the third party warehouse and send that details to you. Or not. Alternative procedure is physically available has been subsequently sold. You can perform an alternative procedure. If that alternative procedure is also not possible, then you may have an issue. Then comes the comment, what is sufficient appropriate audit evidence? Sufficient appropriate audit evidence given the circumstances as I have mentioned. If you wanted to get the confirmation of existence of the particular item, then you can consider that this is for a confirmation of balance is a sufficient appropriate audit evidence. But if you wanted to check whether provision of doubtful debts is sufficient or not, confirmation is not enough. That's what Krishna Kumar Prabhakaran is asking. Any relaxation for small companies where the turnover is less than 25 lakhs? Sir, unfortunately, audit is an audit. So there is no relaxation for any standards on auditing, because you have to follow the procedure. Maybe the minimum audit procedure which you can perform is there in the practitioner's guide for smaller audit entities. Now, like an accounting standard, there is no exemption. As SAS is to be ensured for all big and small size and medium companies, what should be the ideal audit team size? So audit team size and the nature of audit procedure is depending upon the risk of material misstatement, what is the client's nature of business, etc. So it is not one answer will fit into every case, sir. You have to make your own judgment. Rakesh is asking, in case of receivable payment is coming bill to bill basis and outstanding is only for month of March, which is subsequently in April fully collected, whether it is an external confirmation is required. External confirmation, if it is not required also, it is giving you an appropriate alternative audit confirmation that you whatever outstanding as a receivable is fully collected, so that you can use it as an alternative procedure. Aditya is asking, if we are not able to obtain bank confirmation, then we'll cross-check the bank statement, be enough an audit evidence. Lot of alternative procedures are possible. For example, you are not able to get a bank confirmation. Today, everybody is having a net banking. Ask the client to generate the bank statement in your presence and document that it has been generated in our presence by the client, and get the signature of the client and signed by the member of your audit team. That could also be an evidence which can be an alternative procedure. Will be given certificate of participation in soft copy, sir. That is for the branch to discuss. This is a unique program.
Yes,
At the ages of documentation. Yes, sir. Is obtaining management representation is sufficient, mandatory? Yes, it is mandatory according to the standards on auditing. And in certain cases where you have obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence, your MRL is only going to substantiate that process, not more than that. That is what I think that we have answered all the questions. If there are any particular question which we have to answer, we will take it up. Otherwise, Jawahar sir can actually pitch in.
Thank you, sir. I think Mohan or Lavi sir also wanted to, I think, answer one question. Jawahar,
Yeah,
can
Mohan,
you just wait?
yeah, good evening, Mohan sir.
Oh, no question, sir. Ganesh, no question at all for him.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Bayas.
Thank you.
Jawahar ji, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. And before I say anything, I would like to commend Ganeshan sir for the excellent presentation. It was like, really peeling a banana and putting in the mouth. And yesterday, I also was attending Mohan sir's presentation. It was exactly the same, sir, same comment, and it was fantastic. In fact, there were a few points in the standards that I had missed, which I learned from Ganeshan sir and Mohan sir also. Thank you very much, sir. Fantastic presentation. Now, I just wanted to give an example of how we as chartered accountants can add value to our own profession as well as to that of the client. This happened a couple of years ago. I was asked to give a special certificate by a bank in case of one company. And previously, I had given some certificates. But in the meanwhile, the institute had come out with a guidance note on reports on special considerations, and certificates. So on the basis of that, I changed the format of the report. The client was really shocked that what was earlier given as a 1 page went into 2 pages. And it also gave what are all the things that I had verified to give the certificate. So he was saying, no, sir, the institute, the bank will not accept it. I said, look, whether the bank accepts it or not is not my botheration. But this is what is required to be given. You please give it to the bank. And if there is any objection, please ask them to talk to me. They didn't come back to me. Obviously, the banker accepted it. In the similar way, 1 year later, in case of another company, a financial institution wanted another certificate. I gave a similar certificate on the basis of the guidance note of the institute. They were actually insisting that it was a 2-paragraph certificate that they wanted. So when I insisted to the client that they should give this certificate and let them talk to me in case they don't accept it, believe me, sir, the financial institution told the client that this is the kind of certificate that actually gives us more, satisfaction, and it gives us credibility to what we are doing, and gives us sufficient information about the procedure that the auditor has done. And in fact, I was told that they are insisting on a similar certificate from all the rest of the chartered accountants. So, when we are working, if we follow the guidance note of the institute and you are willing to educate your client as well as the third parties who are asking for the certificates, I think you will never go wrong. But the only thing is, have patience, have the courage to stand up and talk about it. Don't bow down to these people, and everything will be fine. And anyway, as Ganeshan Garu has said, please document everything you have done. That is, again, that you are giving an assurance there. So see, it comes under assurance. It comes under peer review. It will therefore it is liable to be tested by your peer reviewer. Please maintain the entire documentation for such assignments also. Thank you very much, sir. This is what I wanted to tell.
Thank you, sir.
Jawar sir, before officially I request Dayana sir to speak, and literally you will become an ambassador for peer review board, sir. Each and every time you are requesting our members to go for peer review. Thank you, Jawar sir. And over to Dayana. Dayaji.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, let me thank all these participants who have been attending this 4-day program. Jawar sir, Mohan sir. I'll tell you one thing. When this discussion was being initiated, some people asked me question, who will attend this? And we are seeing the number of people who are participating is the answer. Chairman, thank you very much for trusting in and evaluating this entire process and ensuring that Hyderabad becomes one of the first branches to host 4-day refresher course. For the first time. Board in the history has come from Hyderabad, and this is beginning.
Yes,
some bandwidth problem. Yeah, some bandwidth problem.
Is it clear now?
Yeah.
Now it's clear. Yeah, now we
are. So I'm yet to get the screen. 1 second.
Chairman, in the meanwhile, I want to end my my duty here. I thank you very much for giving me this assignment for today, and thank you, Ganeshan sir. It was really wonderful, and I have really very much fortunate to be a part of your session. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Bonu sir. Thank you so much for your handholding. And sir, before talking for today's session, I want to discuss about yesterday's one, sir. It's a excellent one. Unfortunately, I could not be at the end. So I request Mohan sir to join again. Thanks for accepting our invitation and joining me again, sir. And I request our, I think Jaya joined. Yes, sir. Yeah, today's session. Ganeshan sir. Yes. And
document when it comes now.
Yeah, Ganeshan sir, it was an excellent session. Very well explained talk, and I can say it was spellbound. And literally, like a student, we are sitting before the screen and learning after a long time. Almost 20 years back, we sat before the board and teacher and learned. But now 4 days, thanks to all the speakers from first day to this day, and they've done very good job and very good contribution to our profession, sir. Thank you so much, and looking forward to your continued support for an Hyderabad branch and members.
Yeah, there's
sir, over to you. And there, sir, before your talk, I request you to present certificates of appreciation for both the speakers. And
yes, positively, sir. Let us share it from our system.
Yeah, this is for Mohan.
This is for. Mohan sir, thank you very much for being part of Hyderabad learning experience.
Thank you, sir.
Let us share. Thank you, sir.
And thank you, sir. This is for our So for today's speaker, sir, there is a request you to present a certificate to today's speaker.
Ganeshan sir, thank you very much for joining us today. It's indeed a pleasure. This is a virtual certificate. And soon you'll be getting it. Is it there or it is still gone?
No,
There.
it is there.
Ganeshan has taken a screenshot. Don't worry.
I will take it, sir. Don't worry, sir.
So first thing which I would like to say is, for the first time, on the first day, we had Shekhar sir with us, where for the first time peer review board and AASB has come together and made a workshop for 4 continuous days. And I'm really happy that, this will give strength to the entire system of, rethinking in the process. Ganeshan sir, today morning, I was actually being told to play a 2020 match in Pune, to ensure that I complete close to 6 standards, including SQC1 in 1 hour. So I quickly played that entire thing and I had to come back. And today when I'm listening to you, I'm feeling that, I'm watching a one-day match. So that itself is a great learning experience altogether. And whatever I was thinking that I have been missing or what there in my mind, you spoke everything very comfortably and your experience is always the best one. One thing which I would like to tell everyone is there is no excuse to standard on auditing. Whether it is a balance sheet with no transactions or a balance sheet which standard on auditing is for everyone. It's only the parameter that, the depth of application is different for all the things. In certain cases, it is the small firm or a big firm. It is again going to be the same for everyone. So friends, I thank you all for giving this opportunity and making us feel that, we can actually explore new things differently. And particularly AASB and peer review board, which has come together for the first time, it is giving us a lot of motivation to ensure that we are actually going to take these things forward in times to come. Ganesh sir, you have actually this time come and spoken about the standard on auditing. We also would like to listen from you with regards to Ind AS and accounting standard applicability. And more importantly, Mohan Lavi sir, your Panama papers is still pending, which we need to discuss and deliberate sometime, which is going to be one unique discussion and deliberation for most of the people. I hope that people will like it and we are going to have it. See, from last couple of days, I'm just folding this standard on auditing papers continuously with me because I am talking on this particular thing at different forums and making people understand that documentation is a demonstration of the work what you have done. Without documentation, if you stand with a nice collar t-shirt and all, or a collar with a tie and all, no is actually going to agree on a great job. But the point is going to speak about a lot of things because they are going to have one after another the steps which you have performed. Sometime very soon, Chairman, we will do one particular program. I'll organize one particular session where how documentation is to be done, step-by-step process. We will take them, everyone together, so that if our firms get strengthened, our profession is going to get strengthened. That is something which we need to really realize. And more importantly, that time has come where regulators are continuously asking us to demonstrate the quality of work we have done, the procedures we have followed, the every aspect. When you read the Ireland FS case, you will get to know everything very clear. So with this, I thank each one of you to actually make it a successful session for the peer review board as well as Jawahar sir. Thank you very much. I think the right person has caught it that you are my brand ambassador to market the peer review so that our firms actually strengthen. The marketing itself is going to be so important, friends. I am telling you, if peer review is not being taken seriously, it is going to actually hamper our own self. If you think that by appointing a friend to do a peer review is going to be something good, but let me tell you, the person who is getting appointed as a peer review is actually doing an injustice to another friend of his by just doing it as a formality. So time has come where we need to see from a third eye point of view and move on and make it a grand success. Just ensure, because only one thing I always talk about, we were relevant yesterday, we are relevant today, we will be relevant tomorrow. If we follow the crucial for our profession. Thank you very much. Thank you, Majan. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Daya sir. And first of all, I sincerely thank all the land speakers for their contribution for the last 4 days. And also thank all the delegates who has registered, sir. More than 560 people has registered. Out of them, continuously 450 plus people are joining us. And thanks so much for active participation. I sincerely thank the program advisors, C.A. Murali Krishna Chaudhary and V. Jawahar sir, for advising me, guiding me, and handholding me for organizing this entire webinar for 4 days. Thank you, sir, Murali Krishna, and thank you, Jawahar sir. I also thank our Hyderabad study cycle and corporate laws and the audit study cycle group, because the idea was conceptualized there. I thank all our senior members for giving this advice and helping me out with organizing this program. I thank the Auditing and Assurance Standards Board Chairman, G. Shekhar sir, and Secretary Megaji for your wonderful presentation. And I request you to please share the presentation to us so that we can put in our website so that delegates can utilize this opportunity. And there, sir, I request you to coordinate with Mega Ma'am for the presentation. And also thanks our Dayanava Sharmaji, Central Council member from Hyderabad, Peer Review Board Chairman, for excellent cooperation and coordination for the Hyderabad branch. And special thanks to Dayaji and thanks to entire my staff. And Dayaji, I am requesting you again. I think he's not there. I request my past chairman and my guru to present a certificate of appreciation for Murali sir for his support. Bonu sir, I request you to present this certificate to Murali sir.
My privilege to you, and we request you to continue to support Hyderabad branch in all its endeavors to the best of your abilities. Thank you so much, sir Murali.
Thank you, Murali sir. And sharing the certificate for Jawahar sir. Bonu sir, request you to present this certificate for Jawahar sir.
Jawaharji, I have no words to express my sincere thanks on behalf of Managing Committee of Hyderabad for the excellent support and hand-holding that you have been giving, not only now, but since quite a number of years. I request you to continue to do so and enlighten us and enrich us with more knowledge. And thank you once again, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And once again, thanks to land speaker Chinnaswamy Ganeshan sir and Mohan R. Lavi sir. And
Yes, sir.
over to Secretary. Sir, Mohan sir, want to say something?
No. I can leave. With permission, I can leave.
Thank you. Over to Secretary sir for official vote of thanks.
Thank you, Chairman sir. It's my proud privilege to offer vote of thanks on behalf of Hyderabad branch of SARs of ICAI for this 4-day virtual refresher course on Auditing Standards. We thank Auditing and Assurance Standards Board and Peer Review Board of ICAI for allotting this program to Hyderabad branch. Friends, for your information, we have a registration count of more than 550. For this, we should give special thanks to our Central Council member Dayanava Sharma and Branch Chairman Macharra Minavalli, who is the main architects of the program. I assume all the land members got benefit from this 4 days virtual seminar. We thank all the speakers of this 4 days: CA Sanjay Kumar Jain, CA D. Aniket Talati from Ahmedabad, CA Mohan R. Lavi from Bengaluru, CA Chinnaswamy Ganeshan sir from Chennai. Our special thanks to CA G. Shekhar sir, Chairman WASB, CA Srinivas Joshi sir, Vice Chairman, CA Dayanava Sharma, Chairman Peer Review Board, CA Rajesh Sharma, Vice Chairman Peer Review Board, CA Mega Saxena, CA Murali Krishna sir, CA Jawahar sir for their valuable inputs and remarks for these 4 days. We thank our SARC Vice Chairman CA Chanmastan Talkaila, Sikasa Chairman SARC Naresh Gilli sir and SARC member Chengalreddy sir. I thank all the management committee colleagues for their active role and participation. We thank all the participants once again for their continuous learning, interest, and full-fledged attendance throughout these 4 days. Actually, it gives more energy and encouragement to conduct more such programs. Without our passion and active participation, these programs wouldn't have come into reality. We thank all the staff of Hyderabad branch for their active role and support. With this, we are concluding this 4-day refresher course, sir, and request everyone to be safe and vigilant by following all government guidelines from time to time and taking all precautions. We are signing off for today and wishing everyone a very healthy and a happy good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Stay
Thank
healthy,
you all.
sir. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you, George, sir. Thank you, Ganeshan, sir.
Thank you,
Uh,
Chairman, sir. Yeah, winding up, sir.
Both the
Ganeshan
doors.
sir, thank you.